At a tense family dinner, my arrogant wife's brother suddenly stood up and screamed, "You stole my wallet and my gold watch, you filthy thief." I denied it, but he smirked, reached into the bag beside me, and triumphantly pulled out his watch and wallet. "See? I knew it was you." He sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. The entire table turned to me in shock, but I couldn't stop laughing. If I had known that marrying Clarissa meant signing up for a lifetime subscription to chaos with a side of judgment, I might have stuck with singlehood and cereal dinners. Don't get me wrong, she's stunning, whip-smart, and can charm a waiter into giving her free dessert, but her family? They're a Broadway show nobody asked for, but can't stop watching. Every Sunday, they gather like it's the Met Gala of dysfunction, and I, Daniel, their token normal guy, get a front row seat. From the first dinner, I knew I'd walked into enemy territory. Picture this, a massive dining room with a chandelier so bright it could guide ships, walls covered in art that probably cost more than my car, and a long mahogany table set like they were expecting royalty, which, judging by their behavior, they thought they were. Clarissa floated through it all in designer heels, every movement practiced like she'd been trained by Vogue. Her brother, Julian, strutted in behind her. Same perfect jawline, same obsession with attention, and the same inability to understand humility. Together, they looked like they'd stepped straight out of a luxury magazine ad titled, "The People Who Never Wait in Line." "Daniel, darling." Clarissa's mother, Gloria, had trilled that first night, giving me a once-over that felt like a background check. "So lovely to see you again. Oh, you wore that shirt again." She said it with the kind of smile that could double as a weapon. Her husband, Martin, grunted from the head of the table, nursing a glass of scotch that had probably been aged since the Civil War. He was the kind of man who believed emotions were for the weak and that the best solution to any problem involved either money or more scotch. "Sit down, son," he said, though son sounded less affectionate and more like a command issued to a confused intern. And then there was Julian, or as I like to call him, the human ego. He leaned back in his chair, gold watch flashing like a distress signal, smirking as he eyed me. "So, Daniel," he said, "still working at that. What's it called again?" "Oh right, that mechanical place." He made it sound like I fixed toasters for a living instead of designing automotive systems. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "It's called an engineering firm. We make things that actually work. You should try that sometime." Clarissa gave me the "please behave" glare. Gloria gasped like I'd slapped a priest. Julian laughed, but it was the fake kind. All teeth, no warmth. And right then, I understood how this family worked. It wasn't conversation, it was a competition. The goal wasn't connection. It was domination. They bragged about vacations like they were reading stock reports. "We just got back from Mykonos," Gloria began. The yacht was small, but quaint. Only 7 bedrooms. I nodded. "That's rough. We had to endure the horrors of Chicago traffic last week. Truly humbling." Martin chuckled, the only sound of amusement that didn't feel rehearsed. "You've got some wit on you," he said. I smiled, taking it as the highest compliment from a man who looked like he'd rather be golfing than talking. Clarissa, ever the peacemaker, squeezed my hand under the table. "They're just being themselves," she whispered. "They mean well." "Sure," I murmured back. "And raccoons mean well when they dig through trash." Dinner rolled on with all the subtlety of a board meeting. Every dish came with a story, not about flavor, but about price. The wine wasn't just wine. It was imported from a private vineyard in Tuscany. The salad wasn't just greens. It was a recipe Gloria learned from a Michelin chef in Paris. Even the bread had a backstory, apparently blessed by a baker with emotional trauma. By dessert, I'd learned that Julian had closed a major business deal. Translation: convinced someone else to invest in his failing startup, and that Clarissa's mother was still recovering from her facelift, which, based on her expressions, hadn't fully rebooted. When the check came, even though, of course, this was their house, Martin insisted on talking about responsibility and earning your place in the world. I nodded politely while he sipped scotch that cost more than my monthly rent. "You see, Daniel," he said, "men like us provide. We lead. We set examples. I wanted to ask what kind of example it was to treat your wife like an accessory and your son like a trust fund experiment, but I decided to live another day." "Absolutely," I said. "Leadership is important, especially when you're leading the race to the liquor cabinet." Clarissa kicked me under the table. Hard. Still, I tried to keep the peace. Every week, I'd show up with a smile and the naive hope that maybe this dinner would be normal. Maybe they'd talk about something other than money or reputation. Maybe they'd ask about my life, how work was going, what projects I was building, or how my mother was doing back home. Nope. Instead, Gloria's favorite hobby was polite interrogation. So, Daniel, she'd say sweetly, when are you and Clarissa moving into a real house? Translation, your apartment doesn't have enough chandeliers. Or, when are you planning to start a family? Translation, please produce grandchildren before my Botox wears off. Julian would jump in with his own brand of subtle cruelty. Yeah, bro, when are you going to upgrade your car? I saw a great deal on pre-owned Hondas. I'd grin. You should get one. It'd match your personality. Affordable, but constantly needing attention. Gloria gasped again, as if sarcasm were profanity. Martin smirked. Clarissa sighed. And I kept going. Because if you can't laugh at this circus, you might as well cry. It wasn't that I didn't love Clarissa. I did. She had moments of real warmth, when the family noise faded and she could just be herself. She was funny, independent, and secretly hated her brother's antics. But the family's world had gravitational pull, all wealth and vanity and status. You couldn't just orbit it, you got sucked in. And if you weren't careful, it would burn you alive. The funny part? They saw me as the outsider, the simple guy who didn't fit in. They never realized I saw through them better than they saw themselves. I wasn't intimidated by their cars, their gold, or their glass walls. I just found it all exhausting. One evening after yet another dinner filled with humble bragging and fake toasts, Clarissa and I sat in the car, her heels off, her head resting against the window. You're quiet, she said softly. I shrugged, just wondering if your families ever had a dinner without a plot twist. She laughed, really laughed. They're not that bad. They make reality TV look like therapy sessions. She smiled, tired but affectionate. You know you love me, though. Of course, I said. You're the only reason I haven't fled to Canada. And I meant it. Beneath the glitter and chaos, she was still my person, the woman who made my black coffee taste like something worth getting up for. But her family? They were the tax I had to pay for that love. The next Sunday rolled around. I walked into that house again, smiling like a soldier entering battle. Gloria hugged me, lightly, careful not to wrinkle her dress. Martin grunted his greeting. Julian clapped my back too hard, like he was trying to assert dominance through chiropractic adjustment. Danny boy, he said. Good to see you again. Brought your appetite. Always, I said. Can't wait to taste another meal seasoned with judgment. Clarissa shot me a warning glance, but even she couldn't hide her smile. Dinner began. Gloria talked about her charity work, which, from what I could tell, mostly involved attending luncheons and wearing expensive shoes in photos. Martin discussed his company's expansion, name-dropping CEOs like they were drinking buddies. Julian bragged about his latest business venture, which I'm 90% sure was just flipping sneakers online. Then came the moment of the night. Gloria leaned over and whispered to Clarissa, loud enough for me to hear, "He's not quite what I imagined for you, dear. But he does seem persistent." I smiled sweetly. That's me, a persistent disappointment. The table went silent. Then Martin laughed, a deep, genuine belly laugh that rattled his glass. You've got spirit, son, he said. I like that. Gloria pursed her lips. Julian looked offended on her behalf. Clarissa just shook her head, grinning into her wine glass. That was my first real victory. Not approval, exactly, but survival with a touch of pride. I'd made it through another dinner without losing my sanity or flipping the table. As we left that night, Clarissa leaned close and said, "You handled them well tonight." "Thanks," I said, opening the car door for her. Just another episode of keeping up with the self-absorbed. She laughed. "You're terrible." "Yep," I said, starting the car. "But at least I'm self-aware." And as we drove away from their mansion's glowing facade, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving this circus. I was learning its tricks, the timing, the tone, the masks. Because if I was going to keep my sanity and my marriage, I needed to become the quiet ringmaster of this absurd family show. And trust me, the main act hadn't even started yet. You know how every family has that one person who thinks they're the main character in everyone else's story? Yeah, that's Julian. My brother-in-law, the man who could make a motivational poster about narcissism. If confidence were currency, he'd be a billionaire. Unfortunately, he's broke in actual dollars, but rich in delusion. The man wakes up, looks in the mirror, and probably thanks his reflection for existing. Julian and I have been at odds since day one. It wasn't a dramatic rivalry at first, more like quiet disdain wrapped in forced politeness. But over time, it evolved. He made it his personal mission to test how far my patience could stretch before I applied for sainthood. Every time I think I've hit my limit, he invents new ways to be insufferable. Like the time he gifted me a self-help book titled How to Marry Above Your Level. At Christmas, in front of everyone. The man actually wrapped it with a bow. When I unboxed it, the table erupted in laughter like it was some kind of roast special. Clarissa's mother giggled into her champagne glass. Martin smirked like he was watching a boxing match, and Clarissa, God bless her, she froze with that tight, social smile that says, "Please don't murder my brother at the dinner table." I looked Julian dead in the eyes and said, "Thanks, man. I'll mail you the sequel. How to Stay There Without Begging Your Dad for Rent Money." The silence that followed? Priceless. Even the clock on the wall paused to see what would happen next. Gloria dropped her fork. Martin coughed into his drink to hide a laugh. Clarissa pinched my knee so hard I swear I still have a dent. Julian just blinked at me, probably processing the insult with the same speed as dial-up internet, then gave that trademark smirk. "Good one," he said, but I could tell it burned. The man doesn't like reminders that daddy funds his lifestyle. That should have been the end of it. Normal people would move on. But Julian? No. He doubled down like a Vegas addict on his last chip. From that day, he decided every encounter between us was a competition. A competition for what, you ask? Hell if I know. Respect? Attention? The last brain cell? He's the kind of guy who enters a room like he's announcing a royal decree. Gold chains, cologne so strong you can smell his ego before you see him, and clothes that scream, "I'm allergic to subtlety." He once wore a velvet suit to a barbecue. A barbecue. While I was sweating through a t-shirt flipping burgers, he was posing near the grill like it was Fashion Week. Clarissa says I should try to understand him. Sure. And I should also try to understand tornadoes and why people put pineapple on pizza. Julian's just insecure, she says. You don't have to react every time he says something dumb. I don't react, I argue. I just respond with educational commentary. She rolls her eyes. Your commentary usually involves burning him alive. Hey, I say, that's character development. But the truth is, Julian's arrogance wasn't just annoying, it was strategic. He wanted to remind me that I wasn't one of them. He had grown up cushioned by money and family name, while I'd actually had to earn things. My father was a mechanic, my mother a nurse. We didn't vacation in Greece. We fixed air conditioners and packed school lunches. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. But to Julian, it was a joke, a cute underdog story he could twist into a punchline. The man has a favorite phrase, one he trots out like a slogan. It's not personal, it's just status. No, Julian, it's definitely personal. Anyway, it all came to a head one night when Clarissa told me her parents wanted another peaceful family dinner. She said it like she believed peace was possible with Julian in the room. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Peaceful, I said. In that family, that's like expecting Wi-Fi in a cave. She gave me the classic wife look. Part warning, part pity. Please, Daniel. Just one nice dinner. No sarcasm. No battles. Just smile. Got it, I said. Smile, nod, and pretend I don't hear him breathing arrogance into the air. The night arrived faster than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my shirt, telling myself to stay calm. Clarissa looked stunning. Sleek black dress, calm smile, ready to referee another round of the Julian show. Remember, she said, we're doing this for family. Right, I said. Family. The same word cult leaders use. We drove up to their mansion. Yes, mansion, because apparently houses with normal walls are for peasants, and parked next to Julian's gold-trimmed car. I swear the thing looked like it belonged in a rap video. He'd gotten it custom painted, with rims that screamed midlife crisis in progress. Inside, the smell of expensive candles and pretension hit me. Gloria greeted us at the door, dressed like she'd just stepped off a yacht. Daniel, she said, lovely to see you again. I hope you're doing well. I am, I said, still earning my meals the old-fashioned way, with a job. She didn't even flinch. The woman's immune system for sarcasm could rival Kevlar. Julian came in next, flashing that wide grin. his watch practically blinding me. Danny boy, look at you, still rocking the humble middle-class aesthetic. Brave choice. I smiled. Thanks. I call it financial stability. You should try it sometime. Clarissa's elbow found my ribs instantly. Be nice, she whispered through gritted teeth. Julian laughed like I'd just complimented him. Oh, you kill me, man. But really, how's work? Still fixing gears and things? Designing systems, I corrected. The stuff that keeps machines running. You know, functionality, that thing your business lacks. His smirk faltered for half a second. Score 1 for the engineer. Dinner started the way it always does. Fancy wine, overcooked steak, and conversation that felt like a competition for who could sound the most important. Martin talked about quarterly returns like we were his board of directors. Gloria reminisced about charity events where she inspired the less fortunate, which, based on her tone, meant she gave them fashion advice. Then came Julian's moment. So, Daniel, he said, swirling his wine like a villain in a soap opera, have you thought about moving into real estate? There's real money there. I could show you how to play with the big boys. I nearly laughed into my steak. Tempting, I said, but I prefer careers that involve actual work and less Instagram posting. Martin chuckled. Gloria pursed her lips. Clarissa whispered, Daniel, under her breath like a prayer. Julian leaned forward. You think you're better than me? Oh no, I said smoothly. I think I'm safer than you, financially. That hit. He faked a laugh, but his jaw tightened. The man hated being mocked, and I loved free entertainment. Halfway through dinner, he decided to flex again. You know, not everyone can handle this kind of pressure, he said, tapping his glass. Some people just aren't cut out for this lifestyle. Takes real confidence. Confidence or delusion? I asked. Because you've got the second one down cold. He froze, looking like I'd slapped him with a credit score. Clarissa sighed, so loud it could have powered a windmill. Martin choked on his drink, trying not to laugh. Gloria muttered something about manners. And that's the thing. Julian was allergic to being laughed at. He could dish it out all day, but the minute you gave it back, he'd crumble. Not visibly, of course. He'd smile through it, pretending he wasn't bothered, but I could see it in his eyes. He hated that I didn't worship him. The rest of dinner dragged on. He bragged about his connections, name-dropped 2 B-list celebrities, and casually mentioned how money can't buy class, which was ironic, given that he'd clearly been trying to do just that for 30 years. When dessert came, I decided to play nice. You know, Julian, I said, I admire your confidence. He perked up. Thank you, man. Finally, some appreciation. Yeah, I continued. Takes real courage to ignore all the warning signs of self-awareness. The table went dead silent. Then Martin burst out laughing. I like this kid, he said. Julian glared at me. Clarissa groaned. Gloria changed the subject faster than a politician under oath. When dinner finally ended, I stood, thanked Gloria for the meal, and shook Martin's hand. Always a pleasure, I said, which was technically true because I enjoyed surviving. Julian followed me to the door. You think you're funny, huh? I don't think, I said, smiling. I know, but don't worry, you'll catch up someday. His eyes narrowed. You're lucky my sister likes you. Trust me, I said, opening the door. So am I. Clarissa and I got into the car, and she exhaled like she'd just run a marathon. Why do you always have to go toe-to-toe with him? Because he keeps throwing punches, I said. I'm just blocking, creatively. You're impossible. Yeah, but I'm entertaining. Admit it. She tried not to smile. You're a menace. Correction, I said, starting the engine. I'm an engineer. I fix broken systems. Your brother just happens to be one of them. She laughed, finally, and as we pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Julian standing by the window, arms crossed, face red. That's when I realized something. He wasn't just arrogant. He was threatened. Because deep down, under the gold watch and empty confidence, Julian knew the truth. I didn't need their world to validate mine. And that, to a man like him, was the biggest insult of all. If there's one thing I've learned from marrying into the Clarissa clan, it's that family dinner is less of a meal and more of a contact sport. Every invitation sounds innocent enough. Just dinner, Daniel. But by dessert, someone's crying, someone's lying, and someone's threatening to disown someone else. It's tradition, like Thanksgiving, but with less gratitude and more emotional warfare. That particular Sunday, Clarissa was unusually cheerful. Always a bad sign. She wore this emerald green dress that screamed, "I'm keeping the peace tonight." I was still trying to decide whether to wear armor or to just bring a bottle of bourbon as emotional support. "Please," she said as we got in the car, "just be nice tonight." "Julian's sensitive lately." "Sensitive?" I scoffed. "The guy's ego has its own zip code. The only thing he's sensitive to is not being the center of attention." "Daniel," she warned, "we're guests. Don't start anything." "I never start anything," I said, fastening my seatbelt. "I just finish it with better vocabulary." She sighed and turned up the radio, probably praying I'd stay quiet. Spoiler, I didn't. When we pulled up to the mansion, excuse me, family estate, it looked like a museum where no one learns humility. The driveway was lined with imported cars that hadn't seen dirt in years. The front door was open, and the faint sound of laughter and crystal glasses clinking drifted out. I took a deep breath, told myself to behave, and immediately doubted that promise. Inside, it was the usual parade of overcompensation. The dining room looked like something out of Better Homes and People Who Lie About Their Taxes. The chandelier overhead could have paid off my student loans, and the long polished table looked so shiny I could see my reflection, my tired, already annoyed reflection. Clarissa leaned in as we walked in. "Smile." "I am smiling," I whispered back. On the inside. Deep, deep inside. Martin sat at the head of the table, regal as ever, swirling his scotch like a king debating which peasant to execute. Gloria was next to him, folding napkins with surgical precision, pretending to pray while definitely judging everyone. Across from them sat Julian, staring at his reflection in a spoon. The man looked like he was about to propose to himself. "Daniel," Gloria exclaimed. "So nice you could join us." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "These dinners keep my sarcasm muscles in shape." She blinked. "What?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just happy to be here." We took our seats. Clarissa smiled politely, and for the first 20 minutes, things were shockingly normal. Martin talked about golf. Gloria bragged about her new yoga instructor. Julian was surprisingly quiet, too busy taking mirror selfies when he thought no one was watching. Even the steak was cooked properly, medium rare, not medium crime scene. For a fleeting second, I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd have one peaceful meal. Then again, I also once thought Julian had maturity potential. I made a lighthearted joke about how Martin's chef must have finally learned how to season food, and Martin actually laughed. Full, hearty, genuine laughter. It was glorious. The cousins cracked smiles. Gloria didn't even correct my table manners. For once, I thought we were having a moment of unity. And then Julian stood up. He didn't just stand up. He slammed his hand on the table like he'd just discovered gravity. "My wallet," he yelled. "My gold Rolex. They're gone." The sound of forks hitting plates was deafening. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause out of shock. "Gone," Gloria gasped, clutching her pearls like she'd just been personally robbed by destiny. "Yes," Julian shouted, eyes darting around the table like a cheap detective in a bad soap opera. "Someone here took them." I leaned back, sipping my wine, already sensing the punchline. "Julian," Martin said sternly, "are you sure you didn't misplace them?" "Oh, I'm sure, Dad," Julian said, voice dripping with fake confidence. "They were right here in my bag. And now? Poof. Gone. I swear to God." The man even made a little poof motion with his hands. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. "Calm down," Gloria said. "We'll find them." But Julian wasn't calm. He was pacing, muttering, performing for an invisible audience. Then suddenly, his eyes locked on me. Sharp, dramatic, theatric. "Daniel." I blinked. "Yes." "You've been awfully quiet tonight," he said slowly, his voice dripping with implication. "Maybe because you're hiding something?" I raised a brow. "Yeah, a desire to leave." Clarissa's head whipped toward him. "Julian, stop it." But he didn't stop. He pointed at me, arm outstretched like he was delivering a Shakespearean accusation. "You stole my wallet and my watch." The table collectively gasped. Gloria gasped so hard I thought she'd pull a muscle. Martin froze mid-sip, his scotch glass trembling slightly. Even the cousins stopped pretending to check their phones. "Excuse me," I said, half laughing, half insulted. "You think I don't play innocent?" Julian snapped. "You've always been jealous. You mock me, you undermine me, and now you're stealing from me." I blinked, genuinely speechless for a second, not from guilt, but from sheer disbelief at how committed he was to his own delusion. Julian, Clarissa said sharply. That's ridiculous. Is it? He said, pacing like a reality TV villain in mid-breakdown. Because I put my things right here, and now they're gone. Who else would take them? Maybe the housekeeper? I offered helpfully. Or your humility. Oh wait, that's been missing for years. Daniel, Clarissa hissed. But Julian wasn't listening. He was pointing, shouting, performing. Admit it, he yelled. Admit you took them. And I just sat there, staring at this man, this grown adult in a designer suit throwing a tantrum over a watch, and thought, I am living in a live-action cartoon. Okay, I said finally, calm as a monk. Let me get this straight. You're accusing me, your brother-in-law, of stealing your tacky gold watch and that wallet you brag about every 10 minutes. It's not tacky, he barked. Right, I said. It's statement jewelry. The statement being, I make poor financial choices. Martin's lips twitched like he was trying not to laugh. Clarissa looked mortified. Gloria was whispering prayers like she was trying to summon Jesus to mediate. Julian's face turned red, not from guilt, but from frustration that I wasn't taking his Oscar-worthy performance seriously. You think this is funny? He growled. Kind of, I said. I mean, it's not every day I get accused of theft between bites of filet mignon. You're mocking me, he shouted. Not mocking, I corrected. Just documenting. Gloria gasped again, clutching Martin's arm. Martin, say something. Martin sighed, rubbing his temples. Julian, maybe you misplaced it. Let's not start World War III over dinner. I didn't misplace it, Julian yelled. It's gone, and I know who took it. He glared at me again, pure theater in his eyes. You've always hated me, he declared dramatically. You're jealous of me. Jealous? I said, snorting. Of what? Your overdraft fees. The room went silent. You could feel the tension thick enough to butter. Clarissa groaned softly. Julian, please. Sit down. But Julian was committed to the bit now. He slammed both hands on the table and leaned toward me. I want my stuff back. Okay, I said calmly. And I want peace in the Middle East, but we can't always get what we want. Admit it, he shouted again. I didn't take your overpriced jewelry, Julian, I said. But I do admire your creativity. Ever considered community theater? You'd kill as idiot number one. Gloria gasped again. I swear, at this point, she was just gasping out of habit. Martin stood up finally, his voice low and firm. Enough. The room froze. Even Julian shut up. Martin looked between us, disappointment etched into his face like a bad sculpture. Julian, he said, if you have proof, show it. Otherwise, sit down before you embarrass yourself. Oh, I'll show proof, Julian said, smirking now. The kind of smirk that made me instantly suspicious. He reached under the table and grabbed the massive tote bag Clarissa had set down earlier. One of those designer monstrosities that could double as a small suitcase. He crouched down, and I swear the man added dramatic pauses like he was playing to an audience. Then, with all the flair of a magician, he pulled out his gold watch and red leather wallet. The room erupted. Gloria gasped so loudly I thought the chandelier might shatter. Martin's eyes widened. The cousins whispered like they were watching a live scandal unfold. Julian straightened up, holding his items aloft like trophies. See, he said triumphantly, right under Daniel's chair. I knew it. Every head turned toward me. Even Clarissa looked stunned, her brows furrowed, confusion and disbelief warring on her face. Daniel, she said softly. And that's when I felt it. That perfect, ridiculous, cinematic absurdity of the moment. Julian, standing there smug and glowing, holding his own damn belongings he'd just found, trying to frame me like a bad sitcom villain. And you know what I did? I started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, not a nervous giggle. I laughed, full, unfiltered, can't-breathe laughter. Because how could I not? The sheer stupidity of it was art. Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Julian's face turned redder by the second. What's so funny, you thief? I wiped a tear from my eye. Oh, nothing, I said between breaths. Just admiring your commitment to fiction. That was one hell of a performance, man. Daniel, Clarissa snapped. This isn't funny. Oh, it's hilarious, I said, still chuckling. The man accused me of theft and then magically found his own stuff under the bag he brought in. Honestly, Julian, you're the most entertaining liar I've ever met. Julian froze. His eyes darted to the bag, then back to me, and I saw it. That flicker of realization that he might have just exposed himself. And that's when I knew. The circus had officially begun. If you've ever seen a grown man fake outrage so convincingly you almost want to hand him an Oscar, then congratulations, you've met my brother-in-law, Julian. The man didn't just accuse me of theft. He delivered the performance of a lifetime, complete with hand gestures, dramatic pauses, and righteous fury that could have fooled a lesser crowd. Unfortunately for him, I have a PhD in spotting BS, earned from years of surviving this family. There we were, frozen around the dining table like extras in a courtroom drama gone off script. Julian stood, one hand clutching the back of his chair, the other pointing directly at me like I'd just robbed Fort Knox. "You stole my Rolex," he said, his voice trembling with fury or bad acting. Hard to tell. "And my wallet. Admit it." For a moment, I just blinked at him, trying to process the absurdity. The man had the emotional range of a toddler who dropped his ice cream. But this was next-level delusion. I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms, and gave him the calmest smile I could muster. "Julian," I said evenly, "the only thing I'm guilty of stealing tonight is your dignity." Gasps. Literal gasps. I swear Gloria clutched her pearls like she was auditioning for Gone with the Wind. Clarissa shot me that look, the one that said, "Daniel, for the love of God, stop being yourself." Julian's nostrils flared. "You think this is a joke?" he barked. "Pretty much, yeah," I said. "And you're killing it. 10 out of 10. Would recommend therapy afterward, though." "Daniel," Gloria snapped, "how dare you mock your brother-in-law during such a serious moment?" I turned to her with my best polite smile. "Mrs. Hart, with all due respect, this serious moment involves your son accusing me of stealing his shiny wrist decoration. Forgive me for not treating it like the Lindbergh kidnapping." Martin sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead like he regretted every decision that led to this dinner. "Julian," he said, voice firm, "if you're going to make accusations, you'd better have proof." "Oh, I've got proof," Julian snapped, slamming his palm on the table again, because apparently subtlety had been outlawed. "I left my things right here by my seat, and now they're gone." Poof. The only person close enough to take them was him. All eyes swung back to me. I could practically hear the suspenseful background music. Clarissa's eyes darted between us like she was watching a tennis match she desperately didn't want tickets to. I took another slow sip of wine. "So, let me get this straight," I said finally. "You're accusing me, your sister's husband, of crawling under this table during dinner, stealing your tacky accessories, and what? Planning to pawn them for gas money." Julian sneered. "You can make jokes all you want, but we all know you've never liked me." "Oh, I adore you," I said. "You're my favorite example of what not to become." Gloria gasped again. At this point, I was convinced she was doing it for cardio. Julian leaned forward, lowering his voice like we were in some detective film. "You've always had something to prove, Daniel. The whole, 'I'm the self-made man, I don't need your money' act. Maybe you finally decided to take what you think you deserve." I blinked, incredulous. "You think I'm jealous of your wallet?" "It's Hermes," he said proudly. "Yeah," I said, nodding slowly. "And it's still empty." Clarissa groaned under her breath. "Can we please not do this here?" Julian ignored her. "I want you to empty your pockets." That's when I laughed, really laughed. "You want me to what now?" "Empty your pockets," he repeated, enunciating each word like he was interrogating a suspect. "You know," I said, smiling, "I've seen some crazy in my day, but this is a new flavor. What's next? A cavity search?" Martin slammed his hand down this time. "Enough. Julian, you're making a fool of yourself." Julian rounded on him. "Dad, you always take his side. You never believe me. Because you lie more than the White House press office," I muttered. Clarissa kicked me under the table. "Stay out of this, Clarissa." Julian snapped, waving a hand at her. "You don't know what he's capable of." "Oh, I do," she said dryly. "He's capable of fixing engines and paying bills. You should try it sometime." That earned her a death glare. The tension in the room was so thick it could have been sliced with one of Gloria's monogrammed butter knives. I decided to twist the knife, metaphorically, of course. "Julian," I said calmly, "if I wanted to steal something from you, it wouldn't be your watch. It'd be your self-confidence. But unfortunately, that thing's too big to carry." The cousins snorted into their napkins. Even Martin's mouth twitched. Julian turned crimson. "You think you're clever?" "No," I said. "I know I'm clever. You just make me look like Einstein." He looked ready to explode. "That's it," he yelled. We're searching everything. The table, the bags, the... Fine, I said, shrugging. Search away. But when you don't find anything, I expect a written apology and maybe a fruit basket. Julian smirked, that oily confidence slipping back into place. Oh, I'll find something. He stalked around the table like a cartoon villain, scanning for evidence. Then, with the dramatic flair of a magician mid-act, he crouched beside the chairs Clarissa and I had been sitting in. His hand dove toward the designer tote bag sitting between us. One of those ridiculous ones that cost more than my first car. He reached in, rustled around, and then, with triumphant glee, pulled out his gold Rolex and red leather wallet. Uh-huh, he shouted, brandishing them like trophies. Found them, just where I thought they'd be. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, the whole Greek chorus of judgment. Gloria clutched her chest like she'd just watched a murder. Martin's face went from shock to disappointment faster than you can say family therapy. Daniel, Gloria whispered, horrified. How could you? I just stared, blinking slowly, letting the absurdity wash over me like bad soap opera lighting. Julian stood there, grinning ear to ear, like a toddler who'd just discovered lying could get him candy. See, he said, I knew it. You thought you could embarrass me, but now everyone knows who you really are. I couldn't help it. A laugh burst out before I could stop it. Oh, buddy, I said, shaking my head. You really picked the wrong career path. You should have gone into acting. His grin faltered. Excuse me. I mean it, I said, chuckling. The way you sold that fake outrage. Brilliant. The timing, the delivery, chef's kiss. Only problem? You forgot your prop placement. Clarissa blinked at me. Daniel, what are you talking about? I leaned back in my chair, still smiling. That's not our bag. Julian froze. What? That tote, I said, pointing. That's his bag. The same one he brought in, set down by my chair when he went to the bathroom earlier. I watched him do it. Guess he got a little too into his performance and forgot which side he left it on. The silence that followed could have powered a meditation app. Julian's confident smirk evaporated. His eyes darted to the bag, then to me, then back to the bag like he was running through excuses in real time. Gloria blinked rapidly. Julian, is that true? He stammered. No, I must have. He's lying. Am I? I said, smiling. Because you've got about 6 cameras in this house, right, Martin? I'm sure one of them caught this little episode in glorious 4K. Martin's brows furrowed. The dining room camera. He turned to his son, voice low and deadly. Julian, did you move that bag? Julian's throat bobbed. Maybe you what? Martin snapped. Julian hesitated, then puffed up his chest. This is ridiculous. You're all just trying to make me look crazy. Oh, honey, Gloria said softly. You're doing that yourself. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Tell you what, Julian. Let's check the footage. If I'm guilty, I'll personally walk myself to the police station. But if you're lying, I paused, savoring the silence. You're apologizing. In writing. Preferably on company letterhead. Clarissa shot me a look that was half stop and half please let this happen. Julian opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked around for an ally. Any ally. But even his mother had retreated into disappointed silence. Martin rose from his chair, tall and furious, and said, Stay here. I'll pull the footage. Julian tried to protest, but Martin's glare shut him down faster than bad Wi-Fi. The patriarch marched off toward his study, leaving behind a silence that could have been sliced with a steak knife. Julian sat back down, fuming. I watched him stew, sipping my wine like this was the best dinner entertainment I'd ever had. Clarissa leaned toward me and whispered, Are you sure about this? Oh, absolutely, I said. I'm dying to see how my theft career unfolds on video. 10 long minutes later, Martin returned, holding a tablet. Everyone, he said, voice cold as winter. You might want to see this. He pressed play. There it was, clear as day. Julian, mid-conversation, slipping off his Rolex, setting it gently into his own bag. Then, moments later, placing that same bag down beside my chair before heading to the bathroom. No one else touched it. No one else even came near it. When the clip ended, the silence was glorious. You could hear Julian's reputation packing its bags and leaving the country. Martin set the tablet down with a soft thunk. Julian, he said quietly, you owe your brother-in-law an apology. Julian's face went pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, like a fish gasping for air, and then muttered, "It was a mistake." "No," I said, standing slowly. "A mistake is forgetting your keys. This was a stunt." Clarissa put a hand over her face. Gloria whispered, "Lord, why is my son dumb?" "And me?" I smiled. "Well," I said, picking up my napkin, "this has been the most entertaining dinner I've ever attended. Next week, let's do karaoke. Maybe Julian can perform Blame It on the Boogie." Martin actually laughed, a deep, relieved sound. Even Gloria cracked a smile through her embarrassment. Clarissa shot me a look that said not now, but the damage was done. Julian sat there, stewing in humiliation, and for once, I didn't feel like the outsider in this family. Because the truth had finally taken a seat at the table, and it looked damn good next to my wine glass. I've been through awkward family dinners before, the kind where someone mentions politics or grandma decides to critique everyone's life choices. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to watching your brother-in-law accuse you of theft and then discover the evidence like he's starring in an off-brand courtroom drama. So when Julian stood there holding his gold watch and red wallet like trophies, waiting for applause, I didn't flinch. I just sat back, folded my napkin, and said the most dangerous phrase a calm man can say. "Please, continue embarrassing yourself. I love live theater." The room went quiet. Clarissa's mouth hung open. Gloria's hand froze halfway to her pearls. Martin's scotch was halfway to his lips, and even the chandelier seemed to lean in for the gossip. Julian smirked like he'd just cracked a case for CSI, Family Edition. "Explain this," he demanded, waving the watch. I looked at it, then at him. "Sure, that's your wrist bling. Congratulations, you found it. The mystery is solved. Can we get back to dinner before the steak needs resuscitation?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't play dumb. It was in your bag." "My bag," I said. "You mean the one that doesn't belong to me?" He sneered. "Nice try." "Oh, buddy," I said. "If I wanted a watch that screams compensating, I'd buy one myself, with cash, not daddy's credit card." Gloria gasped so loud I thought she might need oxygen. Clarissa groaned. Martin muttered something like, "For God's sake." Julian puffed out his chest. "You always have something smart to say, don't you?" "Only because everything you say begs for a smarter response," I said. The cousins at the far end of the table were pretending not to listen, but their smirks gave them away. Julian noticed too. His ears turned red, never a good sign. "You think this is funny?" he snapped. "Honestly," I said, taking a sip of wine. "A little. I mean, how often do you get publicly framed by a guy who can't spell subtle?" Clarissa's hand shot to my arm. "Daniel," she whispered, "please." I turned to her and smiled sweetly. "I'm calm. Look at me, the picture of Zen. He's the one yelling like a guy who just realized he's not the favorite child." Martin cleared his throat. "Julian, sit down." "No." Julian barked, still waving the evidence like a victory flag. "He's not getting away with this." I saw the watch under his chair, his bag, his side of the table. "What else do you need?" I leaned back. "I don't know, maybe logic? Evidence that wasn't planted by a man who still uses his parents' Netflix account." Julian's jaw dropped. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm calling you a creative writer," I said. "You should send this script to Netflix. Title it The Man Who Framed Himself." The sound that came out of Gloria was somewhere between a gasp and a squeak. "Enough, both of you," she said. "We're guests in this house, Daniel." "Actually," I said, "it's their house. I'm the unpaid entertainment." Clarissa rubbed her temples like she was counting down to her next therapy session. "Julian," she said sharply, "stop this. If you think he took your things, then—" "Think," he interrupted. "I know he did." He lifted the wallet for dramatic effect. "My initials. My cards. My cash. Right here. All hidden under his chair." I stared at him, then at the wallet, then at Clarissa. "You know what's sad?" I said quietly. He actually rehearsed that line in his head, probably in the mirror while moisturizing. Julian slammed the wallet on the table, rattling the silverware. "You think you're better than me." "No," I said. "I just think I'm not you." That got a choked laugh from one of the cousins before Gloria's death glare shut it down. Julian turned to his parents, desperate for backup. You see? You see what he does? The disrespect, the arrogance." Martin cut him off with a raised hand. "Julian, you've made your point. Sit down before I lose my patience." But Julian wasn't finished. "Dad, he's mocking me. In our own home." I smiled. "Technically, I'm mocking you and your home. Equal opportunity, you know? Clarissa groaned. Daniel, please. Hey, I said, shrugging. I'm innocent until proven, Julian. Julian pointed at me again, like the world's angriest mall cop. You think you can get away with this? Get away with what? I asked. Being better dressed than you? You planted my things, he shouted. Wow, I said. So I broke into your imagination now? Cool. That's when Gloria decided to intervene, or at least to make things worse. Martin, she said, voice trembling with faux concern. Maybe we should call someone. A private investigator, perhaps? Or an exorcist, I muttered. Whatever gets him to stop talking. Martin gave me a warning look, but I could see the faintest twitch of amusement behind his eyes. For once, he wasn't taking his son's side, and Julian knew it. His voice rose, cracking with indignation. You all think this is a joke, but I know what I saw. Do you? I asked. Because what I saw was you coming back from the bathroom, shoving your bag right under my chair. Then 5 minutes later, surprise, you found your stuff there. Incredible. It's like you're your own magician. Now all you need is a rabbit and self-awareness. Clarissa covered her mouth to hide her smile. Daniel, she hissed, stop. No, I said. I'm invested now. I want to see how far this plot goes. Maybe next week he'll accuse me of stealing his personality. Although, to be fair, that'd be a mercy theft. Julian's face went crimson. That's it, he snapped. You're done here. He grabbed the bag, the supposed crime scene, and held it high. Everyone saw it. The evidence speaks for itself. Yeah, I said. It says made in Italy and property of an idiot. Martin stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. Julian, enough. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further. Julian froze, then slowly turned toward him. Dad, you don't believe him over me, do you? Martin's expression was flat, unreadable. Right now, I believe you're acting like a fool. Gloria gasped again, whispering, Martin, but he ignored her. Julian's mouth opened and closed a few times like a fish in a panic. You always take his side. He's an outsider. He doesn't belong here. I stood up slowly. You're right, I said. I don't belong here. Because unlike you, I work for a living. I pay my bills. I don't measure my worth by how much metal I hang off my wrist. Then leave, he shouted. Get out. Gladly, I said. But you might want to check your security cameras first. Just so you can replay the part where you planted your own evidence like a toddler staging a heist. That landed like a grenade. Every head turned toward Julian. He blinked. What are you talking about? You heard me, I said. You've got cameras all over this house. The fancy kind with night vision and motion sensors, right? Let's see what they caught. Maybe you'll even get your big moment on tape. You can call it the idiot and the empty wallet. Clarissa whispered, Daniel, don't. But Martin was already nodding slowly. He's right. We'll check the footage. Julian froze. There's no need. Oh, there's every need, Martin said sharply. I'm tired of this nonsense. He turned to one of the cousins. Robert, go to my study and pull up the dining room feed from tonight. Julian started sweating. Dad, come on. That's ridiculous. It's a waste of time. Then you've got nothing to worry about, I said. Clarissa's hand found mine under the table, a quiet mix of support and warning. I gave her a small squeeze that said, don't worry, I've got this. Robert returned a few minutes later, holding Martin's tablet. He set it down in front of him, pressed play, and turned the screen so everyone could see. And there it was, Julian, earlier in the evening, removing his watch and wallet from his pocket, dropping them neatly into his own designer bag. Then, right before heading to the bathroom, setting that bag down beside my chair. Clear as day. The silence that followed could have cured hiccups worldwide. Martin's jaw clenched. Gloria's hand fell away from her pearls. Clarissa exhaled slowly, a sound halfway between relief and disbelief. Julian's eyes darted everywhere but the screen. That's not what it looks like. Really, I said. Because it looks exactly like what I said it was, a one-man production of How to Frame Your Brother-in-Law. Martin turned to him. Julian, apologize. Julian sputtered. Dad, now. He looked at me, hatred burning behind his eyes, and muttered. Fine. Sorry. I smiled. Wow. Sincere. Almost sounded like you meant it. Gloria tried to smooth things over. Let's all just calm down. Oh, I'm calm, I said. I've been calm since the moment he called me a thief. Because deep down, I knew something. Stupid always exposes itself. You just have to give it time. Clarissa gave me a look, that half-warning, half-admiring one she does when she knows I'm right, but wishes I wasn't enjoying it so much. Julian sank back into his chair, sulking. The cousins whispered to each other. Martin sighed and poured himself another drink. After a long pause, he looked at me and said quietly, "Daniel, I owe you an apology as well." "No worries," I said. "I get it. Every family needs a scapegoat. I'm just glad the goat finally kicked back." Clarissa laughed despite herself, hiding it behind her hand. Gloria stood and declared the evening over, clearly desperate to restore some dignity to the ruins. "Well," she said tightly, "I think that's quite enough excitement for one night." "Agreed," I said, rising. "Next time let's just play Monopoly. Less chance of a felony accusation." Julian muttered something under his breath. I didn't bother asking what. I'd already won. As Clarissa and I walked out, Martin stopped me at the door. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "thank you for keeping your cool." I smiled. Cool's easy when the truth's on your side. Clarissa and I climbed into the car, the night air finally free of perfume, tension, and bad acting. She turned to me, eyes tired but amused. "You shouldn't have laughed," she said. "I know," I replied. "But come on, you have to admit, it was funny." She chuckled, shaking her head. "You're impossible. And you married me anyway." As we drove away, I looked back at the glowing mansion shrinking in the rearview mirror, that glittering palace of chaos. Somewhere inside, Julian was probably rewriting history in his head, convincing himself he was still the victim. But the footage didn't lie. And that night, as far as I was concerned, justice had better lighting than the chandelier. You know that kind of laugh that just slips out before your brain can stop it, the one that starts in your chest and turns into a full-body event? Yeah, that's what happened. The second Julian triumphantly pulled his missing gold Rolex and red wallet out from the designer bag he himself had planted, my body decided it was comedy hour. I didn't plan it. I didn't mean to humiliate him. But once it started, it was unstoppable. I was gone. It began as a small chuckle, quiet, restrained, maybe even forgivable. But then the absurdity of the whole thing hit me like a truck full of irony, and I just lost it. I mean, come on. The man accused me of theft, held his own bag like Exhibit A, and thought he'd just cracked a case for the FBI. I couldn't breathe. I leaned back in my chair, hand over my face, and laughed like the universe itself had decided to roast him through me. Everyone stared. Forks hovered midair. The chandeliers sparkled judgment. Clarissa's eyes went wide. That "dear God, my husband's about to start a war" look. Gloria clutched her pearls like she was trying to resuscitate them. Martin looked half amused, half horrified, like he wanted to laugh, but was afraid of losing his inheritance. And Julian? His face turned so red I thought he might explode and redecorate the wallpaper in ego. "What's so funny, you thief?" Julian barked. That only made me laugh harder. "Oh," I managed between breaths. "Nothing. Nothing at all. Just admiring your acting skills, man. You should really try out for community theater. You'd make a fantastic idiot number one." Clarissa gasped. "Daniel, really?" I said, grinning. Because the man accusing me of theft just planted his own jewelry in his bag and forgot which side of the table it was on. I mean, come on. You can't write this stuff. Julian blinked, completely thrown. "What?" "Yeah," I said, still half laughing. "That's your bag, genius. The same one you dumped under my chair after your bathroom break. I saw you shuffle like a raccoon hiding trash. Seriously, you had the subtlety of a toddler with chocolate on his face saying, 'I didn't eat the cookies.'" The cousins at the far end of the table snorted into their drinks. One actually choked. Even Martin covered his mouth, pretending to cough. Gloria's lips moved silently, either praying or cursing, hard to tell which. Julian's face twisted, his confidence slipping like butter on a hot pan. "You're lying." "About what?" I said. "Physics? Because unless that bag teleported itself from your seat to mine, I think we both know the truth." Clarissa buried her face in her hands. "Please stop." "Oh no," I said, still grinning. "We've come too far. I want to see how this episode ends. Maybe there'll be a cliffhanger where he accuses me of stealing his common sense next." Julian's jaw clenched. "You think you're funny, huh?" "I know I'm funny," I said. "You just keep providing the material." The cousins burst out laughing now, unable to help themselves. Gloria shot them a death glare sharp enough to pierce armor. This is not funny, she hissed. On the contrary, I said, wiping a tear from my eye. This is the funniest thing that's ever happened at this table. And I once watched Martin try to explain crypto. Martin chuckled despite himself. That's fair. Julian slammed his hand on the table again, rattling the silverware. Shut up. I tilted my head. Why? You're doing great. Keep digging. Dad. Julian turned to Martin, desperate for backup. Are you seriously just going to let him disrespect me like this? Martin sighed, looking more exhausted than angry. Julian, for God's sake, you made a fool of yourself. Just let it go. Julian's mouth fell open. You're taking his side? His side. Martin snapped. I'm taking the side of logic. You accused him of theft, and then found your own stuff. How do you expect anyone to believe you? That's not what happened. Julian protested. He planted them. Oh my God, I said, laughing again. Dude, the gaslighting is Olympic level. You should get a medal. Gloria's eyes darted between us. Boys, please. But there was no stopping it now. Julian stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. You all think this is funny? You think I'm stupid? I smiled. We don't think, Julian. We know. The cousins lost it. One laughed so hard, he actually snorted wine through his nose. Gloria groaned. Martin, do something. Martin held up his hand. Julian, sit down before you embarrass yourself further. I'm not embarrassed. Julian shouted. His voice cracked halfway through, not helping his case. He's twisting everything. Buddy, I said, still leaning back with my arms crossed. No one needs to twist anything. You're already spinning. Clarissa whispered, Daniel, please, but I was too far gone. Julian started pacing around the table like a trapped tiger, muttering under his breath. You people never take me seriously. You always side with him. He's the outsider. He doesn't belong here. True, I said. I don't belong here. I belong somewhere sane. You're smug, he yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. You think because you've got your little engineering job and your self-righteous attitude that you're better than me. I shrugged. Not better. Just less desperate. He lunged forward, but Martin slammed his palm on the table. Enough. His voice was sharp, commanding. Julian, sit down now. Julian hesitated, eyes darting from his father to me to Clarissa, who was visibly mortified. Then, like a sulking teenager, he kicked his chair upright and dropped into it, arms crossed, glaring daggers. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the chandelier. Everyone stared at their plates like the food might suddenly start explaining the meaning of life. I cleared my throat. So, I said lightly, does anyone want dessert? I hear tiramisu pairs great with humiliation. Clarissa kicked me under the table, so hard my soul left my body for a second. I looked at her and mouthed, what? Gloria tried to salvage the evening. Let's all take a breath, she said, her voice trembling but polite. There's no need to. Oh, there's a need, I said. Because apparently, I'm a jewel thief now. I might as well lean in. Julian glared at me. You're mocking me. Yes, I said. Efficiently, too. Martin actually chuckled, shaking his head. You really can't help yourself, can you, Daniel? Nope, I said. It's a gift. Clarissa whispered. It's a problem. Julian slammed his napkin on the table. I'm done. I don't need to sit here and be insulted. Then don't, I said cheerfully. Standing might help circulation. He stood again, red-faced. You think you're clever? I don't think, I said. I've been told repeatedly. That one made even Gloria cover her mouth. She tried to hide it, but the corners of her lips betrayed her. Julian turned toward his father one last time, voice shaking. You're really just going to let him talk to me like this? Martin sighed. Julian, you dug this hole. Daniel just put up the scenic view sign. The room broke into scattered laughter. Gloria actually let out a small chuckle before catching herself. The cousins were barely holding it together. Clarissa, despite herself, cracked the tiniest smile. And Julian, poor, humiliated Julian, grabbed his bag, his evidence, and stormed toward the door. I'm leaving, he shouted. I don't have to take this. Promise. I called after him. He froze at the doorway, turned around, and glared at me with the fury of a man who just realized the Wi-Fi password changed without him. You're not welcome in this family anymore. I smiled. You say that like it's bad news. He stormed out, the door slamming so hard it rattled the chandelier. For a second, the whole room stayed frozen in stunned silence. Then, slowly, Clarissa lowered her hands and looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and exasperation. You couldn't stop yourself, could you? She asked. I shrugged. He accused me of being a thief in front of his parents and tried to frame me with his own bag. You expect me to just, what? Nod politely. You laughed, she said. You laughed at him. I laughed at the situation, I corrected. The situation happened to include him. Martin exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. Well, he said, that was something. Gloria sighed dramatically. Julian will calm down eventually. Eventually, I repeated, nodding. Sure, like global warming. That earned a few stifled laughs from the cousins again. Martin poured himself another drink and looked at me, something like approval glinting behind the exhaustion in his eyes. You handled yourself well, son, he said. Thank you, I said. It's all those years of watching courtroom dramas. You learn to keep your composure when idiots start monologuing. Clarissa groaned. Can we not compare my brother to a TV defendant? Fine, I said. He's more like a bad witness. Overacts, contradicts himself, cries for sympathy. She gave me a side eye that said you're sleeping on the couch, but she couldn't fully hide her amusement either. Martin raised his glass. To surviving another Hart family dinner, he said dryly. I lifted mine. Barely. We clinked glasses, and even Gloria joined in, though her smile was tight. Let's not tell the neighbors about this one, she said. No promises, I muttered. As the tension finally began to melt, dessert arrived. Tiramisu, just as I'd joked. Gloria insisted on serving it herself, probably as a peace offering or an attempt to reassert control of the evening. Here, she said, placing a slice in front of me. Consider this compensation for emotional damage. I grinned. I'll take it. And maybe a gift card for therapy. Clarissa nudged me. Stop it. What? I'm healing through humor. And so we sat there, awkwardly but peacefully, chewing through silence and sugar. Julian's absence was the sweetest flavor of the night. The storm had passed, and for the first time since I married into this circus, I didn't feel like the outsider, just the only one willing to call it like it was. When we finally left, Clarissa was quiet on the drive home. I glanced at her, half expecting a lecture. Instead, she smiled faintly. You know, she said, you might actually be the sanest one in that family. I laughed softly. That's the scariest thing you've ever said. And with that, the night ended the same way it began. Absurd, exhausting, and somehow hilarious. Because when your brother-in-law tries to frame you for theft and ends up exposing himself instead, laughter isn't just appropriate. It's justice with better timing. You ever experience a moment so satisfying it feels like the universe just handed you popcorn and said, sit back, this one's for you? That was me, sitting at that long, overly polished table, watching Julian's empire of lies start to wobble like Jell-O at a kid's birthday party. I didn't even have to say anything. Gravity was doing the work for me. After my laugh fest and his dramatic exit, the room sat in this kind of stunned silence. The kind where everyone pretends they're deep in thought, but are really just replaying the chaos in their heads. Clarissa still looked mortified, but she was starting to realize what I'd already known. Julian had dug his own grave and was about to lie in it, designer suit and all. Martin cleared his throat, breaking the silence like a judge ready to deliver a verdict. All right, he said, his tone flat but dangerous. Since there seems to be confusion about what happened here, we're settling this the simple way. Julian froze mid-step, halfway to the door. What wet? Martin leaned back in his chair, calm as a chess master. The cameras. You could have heard a pin drop. Gloria's fork clinked against her glass. Clarissa inhaled sharply. And Julian? Well, Julian turned the color of unripe tomatoes. He stammered. The cameras? Yes, Martin said evenly. You remember, after that little wine cellar incident, we installed full security coverage, dining room included. You'd know that if you paid attention to something other than your reflection. I swear the collective gasp in that room could have powered Chicago. Julian tried to laugh it off. Dad, come on. You don't really think. Martin raised a hand. Enough. I'll check the footage myself. Julian started sweating bullets. The man went from confident to clammy in 5 seconds flat. That's unnecessary, he said, voice pitching higher. I mean, it's obvious what happened here. The evidence speaks for itself. Exactly, I said, smiling. Let's hear it speak in 1080p. Clarissa covered her face again. Gloria muttered something that sounded like, "Lord, give me patience," though honestly, at that point, divine intervention might have needed patience with her son. Martin stood, the embodiment of old-school authority, and left for his study. "Stay here," he said over his shoulder. "I'll be back in 5 minutes." The moment he disappeared, Julian spun toward me, whisper shouting, "You set me up." I nearly laughed in his face. "Oh, right, because I hacked your house cameras between courses." "Sure thing, Sherlock." His eyes darted between me, Clarissa, and his mother. "You're all against me." Gloria sighed. "Julian, please stop talking. I'm not the bad guy here," he snapped. "He's been provoking me since the day he married Clarissa." I grinned. "Provoking? No, Julian. You provoke yourself. I just provide commentary." He pointed at me, shaking. "You think you're clever, don't you?" "Actually," I said, leaning back, "I know I am. You, on the other hand, should consider switching from crime dramas to reality TV. Might be less confusing." Clarissa groaned softly. "Both of you stop. Please. Let Dad handle it." "Handle what?" Julian muttered. "A misunderstanding?" I tilted my head. "A misunderstanding where you accused your brother-in-law of grand larceny over dinner? Sure, let's call that a mix-up." Before he could respond, Martin's footsteps echoed back through the hall. He returned holding his tablet, face unreadable. He sat down at the head of the table and tapped the screen. "I've reviewed the footage," he said. Julian swallowed audibly. "And?" Martin turned the tablet toward him. "And you might want to explain this." He hit play. There it was, crystal clear, high definition, no room for excuses. Julian, strutting into the dining room earlier that evening, his gold watch glinting like a disco ball. He chatted, checked his reflection in a spoon. Then, and here's the magic part, took off the watch and wallet, tucked them neatly into his own bag, and then, before heading to the bathroom, leaned down and slid that same bag right under my chair. Smooth as wet sandpaper. Clarissa's jaw dropped. Gloria gasped. Of course she did. One cousin muttered, "Holy crap." When the clip ended, the silence that followed was art. If peace had a sound, it would have been that, the sound of Julian's credibility flatlining. Martin slowly set the tablet down. "So," he said softly, "would you like to explain that?" Julian opened and closed his mouth a few times, like a goldfish realizing it had no castle left. It's not what it looks like." Gloria whispered, "It looks like stupidity." "Exactly," I said, grinning. "A perfect visual representation of it." Martin's gaze sharpened. "Julian, do not insult this family's intelligence any further." Julian floundered. I must have forgotten which bag was mine." "Oh, really?" I said. "You forgot which designer bag you brought yourself? That's wild. Happens to me all the time with my plastic grocery sacks." Clarissa's lips twitched. She tried to hold it in, but a small laugh escaped. That laugh was the sound of oxygen returning to the room. Gloria crossed her arms, disappointment carved deep in her face. "Julian, I raised you better than this." "No, you didn't," I muttered. "Daniel," Clarissa warned quietly. "What?" "I'm helping," I said. "Moral support." Martin leaned forward, his voice low but thunderous. "Julian, apologize. Right now." Julian looked at me, eyes burning, pride bleeding out of him. "Dad, now," Martin repeated. Julian hesitated, every muscle in his face twitching like it physically hurt to admit he was wrong. I'm sorry," he muttered. I cupped a hand to my ear. "Sorry what?" "I didn't quite hear the part where you say, 'Daniel, I falsely accused you of theft because I'm a drama queen with impulse control issues.'" Clarissa kicked me under the table again, but Martin actually cracked a smile. "He's not wrong," he said. Julian's head snapped toward him, betrayal flashing across his face. "You're taking his side?" "I'm taking the side of reality," Martin said. "Something you might want to try visiting once in a while." The cousins were laughing now, quietly, but enough to make Julian's face turn the color of raw steak. Gloria whispered, "Julian, maybe take a walk." "No," Martin said firmly. "He's staying. He's going to sit here and learn what happens when you let arrogance drive the car." Julian looked down at his plate like it had personally wronged him. I almost felt bad for him, almost. But then I remembered being called a thief in front of the entire family, and that sympathy evaporated faster than his credibility. I leaned back, smirking. "You know, I've got to admit, the plot twist was solid. The build-up, the false accusation, The dramatic reveal, all very cinematic. Just next time, maybe don't star in your own downfall. Clarissa groaned. Daniel, please. Come on. I said, it's funny. Even your dad thinks it's funny. Martin poured himself another drink. I do, actually. Gloria sighed into her napkin. This family is exhausting. I nodded. Amen. Julian muttered something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like pathetic. Sorry, what was that? I asked. Nothing, he snapped. Martin shot him another glare. You'll do nothing except apologize properly and make amends. Julian shifted in his chair. What do you want me to say? How about the truth? I said. It's new for you, but I hear it's therapeutic. Clarissa smacked my leg under the table. Stop antagonizing him. I'm not antagonizing, I said. I'm narrating. Julian finally exhaled, slumping. Fine. I overreacted. I shouldn't have accused you. I nodded. And, he gritted out. I'm sorry. Better, I said. Now add. And I'll cover the dry cleaning bill for all the tension you spilled at dinner. Daniel, Clarissa said, her tone half warning, half defeated. I grinned and raised my glass. To closure. Martin clinked his scotch against mine. To cameras, he said. They don't lie. Gloria shook her head but smiled despite herself. Even Clarissa relaxed a little, leaning back in her chair. The tension that had strangled the room finally started to loosen its grip. Julian sat in silence, sulking like a man forced to sit through his own roast. The cousins whispered and giggled quietly. The air felt lighter now, almost celebratory. Finally, Martin stood, holding his glass high. Well, he said, I think that's enough drama for one night. Let's all take a moment to appreciate that truth, in the end, always finds its way out, even when some of us try to bury it under a designer tote bag. Laughter rippled around the table. Even Gloria cracked a tiny smile. Julian mumbled, This isn't over. I raised my eyebrows. Oh, it absolutely is. The credits are rolling, my friend. You can't come back from being caught on tape. Clarissa whispered, Please don't make it worse. I'm not, I said softly. I'm just basking. When we finally stood to leave, Julian avoided eye contact. He muttered another half-hearted apology, but it came out sounding like he was allergic to humility. I patted him on the shoulder. Hey, no hard feelings. Mistakes happen. You mistook your own bag for mine, your pride for evidence, and your brain for optional equipment. We've all been there. Clarissa tugged my arm. Daniel. What? I'm being gracious. As we walked out, Martin caught my arm and leaned in slightly. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I appreciate how you handled that. Most men would have lost their temper. I smiled. Oh, I lost it, just internally, where it's healthier and funnier. He chuckled. You've got a good head on your shoulders. Don't let my son drag you into his nonsense. Trust me, I said, glancing back at Julian's sulking figure. I wouldn't follow him into a free sample line. That made Martin laugh, really laugh, for the first time that night. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't have to prove myself to this family anymore. They'd just seen everything they needed to know, not just about me, but about Julian. As we stepped out into the cool night air, Clarissa looked at me, half exasperated, half amused. You know, she said, you could have handled that with a little less sarcasm. Sure, I said. And he could have handled it with a little more honesty. She sighed but smiled. You're impossible. Yep, I said, taking her hand. But I'm also innocent. And according to the footage, extremely photogenic. She laughed, that real, relieved laugh I hadn't heard all evening. And as we drove away, I looked back at the mansion glowing behind us, thinking about the irony of it all. For once, the truth didn't just set me free, it embarrassed the hell out of the right person. And that, my friends, is the kind of justice you don't need a judge for, just a good camera and impeccable timing. There are bad nights, and then there are nights where your brother-in-law gets caught red-handed on video, trying to frame you for theft, and the entire family watches it in glorious HD. I thought that would be the end of it. A little embarrassment, a forced apology, and then back to pretending we all liked each other. I was wrong. Because Julian Hart doesn't do humility. He does denial, loud, public, and preferably with an audience. The moment Martin put down the tablet, the room went from silent tension to live volcano. Julian's face turned the color of an overripe tomato. He jumped up so fast his chair nearly toppled. That's not what it looks like, he shouted. I sighed. You keep saying that. man, but it literally looks exactly like what it is. Shut up, he barked, pointing at me. His voice cracked halfway through the word, which really killed the intimidation factor. You've twisted everything. Clarissa groaned softly beside me. Gloria whispered something like a prayer, though I think it was actually, Lord, please make him stop talking. Martin stayed seated, calm but clearly done with the performance. Julian, he said, his tone like a quiet storm. You need to stop. Oh, I see. Julian snapped, pacing like a cornered cat. Now I'm the bad guy. I'm the villain because I made one mistake. One mistake, I said, raising an eyebrow. You falsely accused me of theft in front of your whole family, planted your own watch like a magician on crack, and then doubled down when the cameras caught you. That's not a mistake, that's a career. The cousins at the far end of the table snorted. One tried to hide his laugh behind a napkin. Julian spun on me. You think you're funny, don't you? I don't think, I said. The evidence speaks for itself. Daniel, Clarissa hissed. Please. But I couldn't resist. I'm sorry, I said, holding up my hands. He's just such a gift. You can't script this level of delusion. Julian's eyes went wild. You smug. He stopped himself, glancing at his father. You know what, fine. Everyone always takes his side. The outsider. The working-class hero. Well, congratulations, Daniel, you win. You always do, don't you? I blinked. Wait, when have I ever won? All I've done is survive your dinner parties. He ignored me. You think you're better than me because you've got your little job and your moral superiority, but you'll never be one of us. I laughed. Julian, I don't want to be one of you. I enjoy paying my taxes. Martin's mouth twitched like he was fighting the urge to laugh. Gloria, however, was one deep breath away from fainting. Boys, she cried, her pearls practically clacking in distress. This is not the time. Julian slammed his hands on the table, rattling the cutlery. You humiliated me. I leaned forward, resting my chin on my hand. Actually, you did that yourself. I just provided commentary. Think of me as your narrator. Only funnier and less forgiving. He growled, literally growled, like a dog seeing the mailman. You've been jealous of me since day one. I blinked. Jealous? Of you? My guy, the only thing I envy about you is how you can afford therapy and still not use it. That got a few muffled laughs from the cousins again. Even Clarissa's lips twitched. Julian noticed. Big mistake. Oh, you think this is funny too? He shouted at her. You're defending him, aren't you? Clarissa's eyes flashed. Julian, don't start with me. You married a clown, he spat, waving toward me. A nobody with a smart mouth. Hey, I said, at least I'm funny. You're just loud. Martin stood abruptly, his chair scraping. Enough. His voice boomed through the room like thunder. Julian, you will apologize properly, or I swear. But Julian cut him off, voice trembling with anger. You always do this, Dad. You humiliate me in front of everyone. You think he's better because he's calm and sarcastic, but he's just pretending to be perfect. Buddy, I said softly, if I were pretending to be perfect, I wouldn't have married into this circus. Clarissa groaned. Daniel. Sorry, I said, waving my hand. Just a reflex. Julian's face twisted, and for a second, I thought he might actually throw something. He glanced around, hands twitching, eyes wild. The meltdown was officially in full swing. You all think I'm stupid, he said, pacing faster now. You all laugh at me behind my back. Well, go ahead. Laugh. He grabbed his water glass and hurled it against the wall. It shattered dramatically, and Gloria shrieked like a Victorian widow. Julian. Martin roared. That's enough. Julian ignored him. No, it's not enough. You've all been waiting for this. For me to screw up, for Golden Boy Daniel to come out looking like the victim. I stood slowly, holding up both hands. Hey, I don't need to look like the victim. You're doing great work making me the hero all on your own. Clarissa whispered. Daniel, sit down. But I wasn't done. You accused me of stealing, Julian. You lied, got caught, and now you're smashing glass like it's performance art. You want forgiveness? Start with accountability. Don't lecture me, he shouted, voice cracking again. You're not part of this family. Finally, I said. Something we agree on. Martin slammed his hand down again, louder this time. Julian, apologize and get out before I lose what's left of my patience. Julian laughed bitterly, a sound that made even Gloria flinch. Apologize? To him? Never. He pointed at me again, shaking. He doesn't belong here. He's not one of us. You just like him because he reminds you of who you used to be, before money fixed your morals. Martin's eyes went cold. Watch your mouth. Julian smirked, desperate to land one more blow. You always cared more about appearances than your own son. Well, congrats. Now you've got a new one. That silence, sharp, cold, dangerous, lasted a full 10 seconds. Even the chandelier seemed to stop buzzing. Martin stared at him, his voice calm but lethal. Get out. Julian blinked. What? You heard me, Martin said. Get out. And don't come back until you learn the difference between pride and stupidity. Gloria gasped softly. Martin. No, Gloria, he said firmly. I've tolerated this long enough. He tried to destroy another man's reputation because his own ego couldn't handle being challenged. Julian's bravado cracked right there. You could see the panic behind his eyes. Dad, I didn't mean. Out. Martin repeated, pointing to the door. Julian hesitated, then turned his glare back on me. This isn't over. I smiled. You're right. I still haven't gotten dessert. Clarissa covered her face with both hands. Martin groaned, but I swear I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Julian stormed out, muttering curses under his breath. The door slammed so hard the chandelier rattled again. The moment it clicked shut, the tension in the room broke like a snapped guitar string. Gloria immediately started dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. My poor boy. He's just under so much pressure. Yeah, I said. Pressure to behave like an adult. Tough adjustment. Clarissa elbowed me, whispering, stop. Martin poured himself another scotch, his movements slow and deliberate. Daniel, he said after a pause, you handled that better than I would have. Thanks, I said. Years of working with malfunctioning machinery prepared me for this. He's just louder and more expensive. That got a quiet laugh from one of the cousins. Gloria shot them a look, but didn't comment. Clarissa finally exhaled. Well, that was something. Yeah, I said, sitting back down. If something means a meltdown worthy of cable TV. Gloria wiped her eyes again. He's still my son. And I get that, I said. But maybe next time, he could come to dinner without turning it into a courtroom drama. Martin nodded in quiet agreement. He'll have to face the consequences. I won't tolerate this kind of behavior anymore. Consequences? I asked. Like therapy? Or a restraining order from all dinner tables within a 10-mile radius? Clarissa rolled her eyes. Daniel. What? I said, raising my hands. I'm offering ideas. The room finally began to relax. The cousins whispered and chuckled. Gloria ordered the staff to bring dessert to lighten the mood. Though honestly, even cheesecake couldn't sweeten the disaster that had just happened. When dessert arrived, I looked around at the remains of the chaos, broken glass, spilled wine, and the faint echo of Julian's tantrum, and couldn't help but smirk. You know, I said, slicing into the cake. I feel like we've bonded as a family tonight. Martin chuckled. In a twisted way, yes. Clarissa leaned closer and whispered, you do realize this is all going to be talked about for years, right? Good, I said. Maybe they'll finally have a story worth telling that doesn't involve yachts and golf. She shook her head, but smiled. You're impossible. Maybe, I said, but at least I'm innocent. And entertaining. By the time we left, Gloria had retreated to her room. Martin had poured himself one last drink, and the cousins had quietly declared it the best dinner in family history. Clarissa and I walked out into the cool night, the air finally quiet. In the car, she turned to me. You didn't have to poke him so much. Oh, I had to, I said. It was public service. Some people need reminders that karma comes with a rewind button. She smiled, tired but amused. You know, one day your sarcasm's going to get you in trouble. Maybe, I said, grinning. But tonight, it got me justice and cake. She laughed, really laughed this time. And as the headlights cut through the dark road home, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, chaos was my element. Because no matter how rich or ridiculous the hearts were, truth had a way of cutting through all the noise. And tonight, it did so with style, shattered glass, and a punchline. After Julian's grand exit, the mansion felt suspiciously peaceful, like the Wi-Fi signal of drama had finally dropped. Gloria retreated upstairs, mumbling about spiritual cleansing, and Martin poured what I'm pretty sure was his fourth scotch of the night. The cousins quietly left, whispering legendary as they passed me, which I'll admit, felt like applause. Clarissa and I stayed behind, finishing dessert in silence. The tension melted with the last spoon of tiramisu. She finally said, "You handled that way too well." I shrugged. "Experience. My family's crazy, too. They just don't wear it in designer labels." Martin looked up, eyes softer now. "Daniel, I owe you an apology." I smiled. "No need. Happens to everyone. My mom once accused me of stealing her slippers. Turns out the dog ate them. That actually got him to laugh." Gloria peeked back downstairs, frowned at the sound, and vanished again. Clarissa reached for my hand. "You were calm. I'm proud of you." "Thanks," I said. I figured someone had to represent the sane population. For the first time, dinner ended without me being the problem, and I left that house finally feeling like the joke wasn't on me. A week later, Karma sent an email. Martin called me personally, voice calm, tone final. "Son," he said, "I've made some decisions about the family business. Julian needs time to mature. You, on the other hand, have integrity." Translation: Julian's grounded, I got promoted. Turns out, Martin wanted someone trustworthy to oversee a few engineering contracts for his company. I didn't gloat. Okay, maybe internally I was dancing. Clarissa laughed when she found out. "You really did nothing and still won." "That's the secret," I told her. "Never wrestle with pigs. You both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it." Julian texted once, something vague about starting fresh. I replied with a thumbs up emoji and haven't heard from him since. Now every time I show up to a family event, he mysteriously has other plans. Gloria pretends not to know why. Martin always greets me like a son, and Clarissa just squeezes my hand with that look that says, "You handled it your way." So, yeah, justice came quietly, wearing a smirk. And whenever anyone mentions that dinner, I just smile and say, "Ah yes, the night the thief caught himself." After my son's funeral, my wife threw a wooden box into the river and walked away. When I ran closer, I heard a faint sound from inside. "Please, be empty," I whispered, dragging it out. I pried it open, and what was inside left me speechless. Look, I'm not saying I expected my son's funeral to be a good time. Funerals generally rank somewhere between dental surgery and listening to your uncle's political rants on the fun activities scale, but I at least thought it would follow the basic script. You know, somber music, people crying into tissues, someone saying something profound about being in a better place now, and then everyone goes to eat mediocre casseroles while pretending they're not checking their phones. Standard American grief protocol. But no, not today. Today, God apparently woke up and chose chaos. It was raining, and I'm not talking about that soft, poetic drizzle you see in movies where a single tear mixes with a raindrop and some piano music swells in the background. I'm talking full-on biblical deluge. The kind of rain that makes you wonder if Noah, my Noah, ironically enough, had the right idea about building an ark. The sky was the color of a bruise, and the wind was whipping around like it had a personal vendetta against umbrellas. Half the mourners looked like drowned rats in their Sunday best, and the other half had given up entirely and were just standing there getting baptized by Mother Nature's fury. The funeral director, a guy named Howard who looked like he'd been embalming himself for the past 20 years, kept trying to speed things along. Can't say I blamed him. The cemetery was turning into a swamp, and I'm pretty sure I saw a family of ducks considering moving in. My shoes were caked in mud that had the consistency of chocolate pudding, and my suit, the only decent one I owned, the one I'd worn to my wedding 7 years ago, was plastered to my body like a second, significantly less comfortable skin. Clara stood next to me during the service, and that's when I should have known something was off. My wife, my grieving wife, was statue still, not crying, not shaking, not doing any of the things you'd expect from someone who just buried their 3-month-old son. Her makeup was running down her face in streaks that made her look like she was auditioning for a horror movie, but her expression? Blank. Like someone had unplugged her brain and forgotten to turn it back on. I tried to hold her hand. She pulled away. Okay, fine. Grief hits people differently, right? Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she was compartmentalizing. Maybe she was doing that thing where you shut down completely, because feeling anything at all would shatter you into a million pieces. I'd read the pamphlets they give you at the hospital. I knew the 5 stages of grief. I just didn't know there was a 6th stage called acting like a malfunctioning robot. After they lowered the tiny casket into the ground, and Jesus, Nothing prepares you for how small a baby's coffin is, how wrong it looks disappearing into the earth. People started dispersing. My mom hugged me and whispered something about God's plan that I pretended to find comforting. My dad clapped me on the shoulder with that awkward dad strength that's supposed to convey emotions he'd rather die than speak out loud. Friends mumbled condolences. The whole thing was a blur of black umbrellas and uncomfortable eye contact. Then I noticed Clara was gone. I looked around, squinting through the rain like some kind of discount detective. The cemetery was mostly empty now, just a few stragglers making their way back to their cars, probably already thinking about what they were going to watch on Netflix later. Lucky them. Normal problems. Normal lives. That's when I saw her. She was at the river. The cemetery backed up to this river. One of those murky, gray bodies of water that looks like it's seen some things and would really prefer not to talk about it. Clara was standing at the edge, and she was holding something. A box. Wooden, about the size of a shoebox, maybe a little bigger. She was clutching it to her chest like it contained the nuclear launch codes or the last slice of pizza at a party. My first thought, because I'm an optimist in the most pathetic way possible, was that maybe it was Noah's ashes. Maybe she'd had him cremated separately? Was that a thing people did? I didn't know. Grief brain makes you stupid. You start accepting explanations that make zero sense just because your mind is desperately trying to find a narrative that doesn't involve complete insanity. My second thought was that maybe it was letters. You know, those letters people write to say goodbye, to process their feelings, to leave something behind. Clara was a writer. Well, she wanted to be. She had 3 unfinished novels on her laptop and a collection of journals that dated back to middle school. Maybe this was her way of letting go. My third thought, the one I didn't want to acknowledge, was that maybe I was married to someone I didn't actually know at all. And then she threw it. Just tossed it. Like she was skipping stones at summer camp. Like the box wasn't important. Like whatever was inside was garbage. The box hit the water with a sound that I can still hear when I close my eyes. Not a splash. A plop. Heavy. Final. Wrong. For about 3 seconds, I stood there like an idiot, my brain trying to catch up with what my eyes had just witnessed. Then instinct kicked in, or panic, or insanity, or whatever you want to call the thing that makes you move when everything else tells you to freeze. And I was running. Clara, I shouted, but my voice got eaten by the rain and the wind, and probably by the sheer absurdity of the situation. She turned around. Calm. That's what got me. She was calm. Her face had this serene expression, like she'd just finished a yoga class or finally cleaned out the garage. Like she hadn't just thrown a mysterious box into a river at our son's funeral. I didn't stop running. My dress shoes hit the muddy riverbank and immediately lost all traction. I went down hard, catching myself on my hands, feeling something in my wrist go pop in a way that suggested future medical bills. Didn't care. Got back up. Kept going. Please, I muttered. Half to God. Half to the universe. Half to whatever deity handles absolute nightmare scenarios. Please be empty. Please be rocks. Please be anything except what I think it is. The water was cold. Shockingly cold. The kind of cold that makes you question every life choice that led you to this moment. I waded in up to my waist, the current pulling at my legs, trying to drag me downstream like it wanted in on whatever cosmic joke was unfolding. The box was floating, barely, about 10 feet out. I lunged for it, got my fingers on the edge, and pulled it toward me like I was saving a drowning victim. Which, as it turned out, I was. I dragged the box to shore, my teeth chattering so hard I thought they might shatter. My fingers were numb. My wrist was screaming. My brain was somewhere between denial and a complete mental breakdown. I fumbled with the box, trying to find a latch, a lock, anything. It was sealed shut, but not well. Just a simple metal clasp that looked like it came from a craft store. I used my car key, jammed it under the clasp, and pried up with the kind of desperate strength you only get when adrenaline and terror are having a party in your bloodstream. The clasp popped. The lid opened. And the whole world stopped. Inside, wrapped in a white cloth that looked like it had been torn from a sheet, was a baby. Not a doll. Not a memory. A baby. A real, actual, living baby. Our baby. Breathing. Faintly. His tiny chest moving up and down in a rhythm that was the most beautiful and most horrifying thing I'd ever seen. I forgot how to speak. Forgot English. Forgot my own name. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the box. I pulled the cloth back, and there he was, Noah's face, Noah's tiny fingers, Noah's everything. But not dead, not gone. Here, present, alive. You don't understand, Clara said from behind me. I turned. She was standing there, umbrella perfectly still above her head, rainwater running off the sides like she was in her own personal snow globe of crazy. Her voice was level, measured, like she was explaining why she'd bought the wrong brand of cereal. My mouth opened, closed, opened again. Finally, words came out, though they sounded like they were coming from someone else. Someone who wasn't currently holding their supposedly dead son while standing waist-deep in a river during a thunderstorm. Oh, trust me, I gasped, pulling the baby, my son, my living son, against my chest. I'd love to stop understanding this right now. So there I was, standing in a river, holding my supposedly dead son who was very much not dead, staring at my wife like she'd just sprouted a second head. And not even a nice second head. Like one of those evil twin heads you see in horror movies that speaks Latin backwards and knows where you hide your embarrassing browser history. Clara stood on the riverbank with her umbrella held at a perfect 45-degree angle, like she was posing for the world's most disturbing catalog photo shoot. You don't understand, she repeated, and I swear to God. Her tone was the same one she used when explaining why she'd rearranged the kitchen cabinets without telling me. Calm, rational, utterly detached from reality. You're right, I said, my voice coming out somewhere between a laugh and a scream. I definitely don't understand why my wife just threw our living baby into a river. That's a gap in my comprehension I'm totally okay with keeping. She took a step closer to the water's edge, and I instinctively stepped back, clutching the baby tighter against my soaked chest. The white cloth was getting wet, and I could feel his tiny body shivering. Or maybe I was shivering. Probably both. It was a real group shiver situation. The timing was wrong, Clara said. And I kid you not. She said it like she was talking about a dentist appointment. We discussed this, Mason. Before he was born, we talked about the financial situation, the career opportunities, the what? I interrupted, my brain trying to process words that made individual sense, but collectively sounded like word salad prepared by a psychopath. We talked about having a baby. Past tense. Had. We had a baby. This baby. This living, breathing baby that you just. I couldn't even finish the sentence. The English language didn't have adequate words for what had just happened. We can fix this, she continued, and those 4 words hit me like a freight train made of pure insanity. We're still young. We can try again in a few years when we're more established. When the timing is right. Fix this. Fix this. Like he was a typo in a Word document. Like she'd accidentally ordered the wrong color throw pillows from Pottery Barn. Like our son. Our 3-month-old son who I'd been getting up with at 2 a.m. every night. Who'd just learned to smile. Who had this little dimple on his left cheek that was a carbon copy of mine. Was a scheduling error that needed correction. That's when I knew. Like, really knew. This wasn't grief. Grief makes you cry. Grief makes you scream. Grief makes you want to burn the world down or sleep for 1,000 years or both. Grief is messy and ugly and human. This was something else entirely. This was calculation. This was planning. This was someone who'd looked at our son and decided he was inconvenient. He's not a typo, Clara, I said, and my voice was shaking so hard the words barely came out. He's not a mistake you can just erase and pretend never happened. She tilted her head, studying me like I was the one being unreasonable. You're being emotional, she said. You're not thinking clearly. You threw our baby in a river. The words exploded out of me, loud enough that a couple of crows took off from a nearby tree, probably tweeting about the insane humans to their crow friends. I'm sorry if that makes me a little emotional. I'm sorry if watching my wife commit attempted murder is affecting my ability to think clearly. For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not remorse. Not horror. Something closer to annoyance, like I was making a scene at a nice restaurant. Don't be dramatic, she said. I knew you'd find him. I knew you'd. Are you insane? I was backing up now, moving toward the shore, toward my car, toward literally anywhere that wasn't near her. The baby, Noah, Liam, I didn't even know what to call him anymore, made a small sound against my chest, and I felt his tiny hand curl against my soaked shirt. You knew I'd. What, go fishing for our son? This was a test? A trust exercise? It was a solution, she said, and there was something in her eyes that made my blood run colder than the river water. You never listen to me, Mason. You never hear what I'm saying. I told you I wasn't ready. I told you I needed more time. But you were so excited, so sure that we could make it work, and she paused, and for a second I thought maybe she was going to snap back to reality. I needed you to understand. Understand. Right. Because nothing says, please understand my feelings, quite like infanticide. I made it to the shore, my legs shaking so hard I almost fell twice. My car was in the parking lot, maybe 50 yards away. It might as well have been 50 miles. Clara wasn't following me, which was either a blessing or deeply concerning. Maybe both. Stay away from us, I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. I'm taking him to the hospital, and then I don't know what I'm doing, but it doesn't involve you. Mason, wait. She took a step forward, reaching out. No. I was moving now, jogging, my wet shoes squelching with every step. No waiting. No talking. No fixing. We're done. I heard her call my name again, but I didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around. If I looked at her face one more time, I might actually lose whatever small grip on sanity I was still maintaining. The car was a 2015 Honda Civic that had seen better days, better years, really. The passenger seat was covered in fast food wrappers and old mail, and there was a concerning smell coming from somewhere in the back that I'd been meaning to investigate for 3 months. But right now, it looked like a spaceship that could take me far, far away from this nightmare. I fumbled with my keys, nearly dropped them twice because my hands were shaking and numb and also currently occupied with holding a baby. Finally got the door open, climbed in, slammed it shut, locked it. All the locks. Every single one, including the child safety ones in the back that I'd installed when Clara was pregnant and we were still pretending to be a normal, happy family. The baby, I needed to call him something, and Noah didn't feel right anymore because Noah was supposed to be dead, and this felt like a different person, a new start, a do-over, was barely moving. His eyes were closed, and his breathing was shallow, and panic started crawling up my throat like a living thing. Okay, I muttered, cranking up the heat even though I was already soaked through. You're okay. We're okay. We're going to the hospital, and they're going to fix you up, and then we're going to figure out what the hell just happened, and then maybe I'm going to check myself into a psych ward because I think I'm having a mental breakdown. The baby didn't respond, which was fair because he was 3 months old and also possibly hypothermic. I started the car, threw it in reverse, and immediately almost backed into a headstone because my depth perception was apparently on vacation along with my sanity. Fixed it. Shifted to drive. Peeled out of the cemetery parking lot like I was auditioning for Fast and Furious. Grief drift. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Clara standing in the parking lot, umbrella still perfect, watching me leave. She didn't run after the car. Didn't scream. Didn't do anything except stand there like a mannequin who'd taken a wrong turn out of a department store window. The hospital was 10 minutes away. I made it in 6, running 2 red lights and definitely exceeding the speed limit in a school zone. But I figured if a cop pulled me over I could just gesture to the soaking wet baby on my chest, and they'd probably give me an escort instead of a ticket. The ER entrance was lit up like a sad Christmas display, all fluorescent brightness that made everything look worse than it actually was. I parked in a loading zone because I was way past caring about parking regulations, grabbed the baby, still wrapped in the wet white cloth like the world's most depressing burrito, and ran inside. The automatic doors opened with a cheerful ding that felt wildly inappropriate. I need help, I shouted, and every head in the waiting room turned to look at me. I must have looked like absolute hell, soaked suit, muddy shoes, wild eyes, holding a baby wrapped in what was essentially a wet bedsheet. My son. I found him in the river, and he's not. He needs. A nurse appeared, thank God. She was maybe 50, with gray hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and was no longer impressed by anything. She took one look at me, one look at the baby, and snapped into action. Room 3. She barked at someone behind her. To me. Come with me. Now. I followed, stumbling over my own feet, trying to form coherent sentences. He's breathing, but barely, and he's cold. And my wife. She threw. I found him. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down and give me the baby. I can't. I mean, yes, but I looked down at the tiny bundle in my arms, at the little face that was way too pale, and something in my chest cracked clean open. "Please help him." "That's what I'm here for," she said, and there was something in her voice. Not quite kindness, but not quite clinical detachment either. Professional compassion. "Let go, Dad. We've got him." I handed him over, and it felt like cutting off my own arm. The nurse disappeared through a set of double doors, and I was left standing in the hallway, dripping river water onto the linoleum, shaking like a leaf in a hurricane, officially and completely alone. The waiting room chair was designed by someone who either hated humanity or had never actually sat in a chair before. Maybe both. It was one of those molded plastic numbers that looked like it came from a factory that specialized in making medieval torture devices but wanted to rebrand for the modern age. The armrests were positioned at exactly the wrong height to be comfortable, and the seat had a slight angle that made you feel like you were perpetually sliding toward the floor. After about 20 minutes, my lower back was staging a full rebellion, and my tailbone had filed for divorce. I'd stripped off my suit jacket somewhere around minute 5 because it was soaked through and smelled like river water, dead fish, and existential dread. My shirt was still damp, clinging to my skin in a way that made me acutely aware of every breath. I tried to wring it out in the bathroom, but there's only so much you can do with a dress shirt in a hospital bathroom sink, while also having a complete mental breakdown. Multitasking has its limits. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead with that specific frequency that makes you wonder if this is how they get confessions out of people in spy movies. Just stick them in a waiting room with bad lighting and worse seating for a few hours, and they'll admit to anything. A guy across from me was watching some late-night talk show on the mounted TV with the volume on mute and closed captions that were absolutely butchering whatever the host was saying. At one point the captions read, "Porpoise forklift banana," and I started wondering if I was hallucinating. The guy didn't seem to notice or care. He was eating chips from a vending machine bag with the kind of commitment that suggested he'd been here a while and had given up on dignity approximately 7 hours ago. Every time the double doors opened, I lurched forward like a meerkat on high alert, hoping for news. Any news. Good news, bad news, weird news. At this point, I'd even settle for completely irrelevant news about someone else's medical situation if it meant someone would acknowledge my existence. Around midnight, a doctor emerged. Not my doctor, just a doctor, and called out a name that wasn't mine. The woman next to me stood up and followed him, and I felt a surge of irrational anger at this complete stranger for getting information while I was still sitting here, marinating in anxiety and river water. I called my parents. That was a mistake. My mom answered on the second ring with that tone that suggested she'd been waiting by the phone with her hand already hovering over it. "Mason? What's wrong? Are you okay? Did something happen at the funeral? Where's Clara?" "Mom, I paused, trying to figure out how to explain the situation without sounding like I'd lost my mind. Failed immediately. Noah's alive. Clara threw him in a river. I'm at the hospital. Don't come yet. I'll call you later." I hung up before she could respond because I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to deal with her reaction. My phone immediately started buzzing with callbacks and texts that I ignored with the dedication of someone avoiding their credit card bills. At some point, maybe 1 a.m., maybe 3 a.m., time had lost all meaning. A janitor came through mopping the floors. He was maybe 70, whistling something that might have been a song from the 60s, completely unbothered by the various states of human misery surrounding him. He mopped around my feet with the casual efficiency of someone who'd seen everything and was deeply unimpressed. "Long night?" he asked, not really looking at me. "You could say that," I replied. "You could also say it's the worst night of my entire life, but long works too." He chuckled, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. "They all feel like the worst night until you have a worse one. That's life, kid. Just one worse night after another, with occasional sandwiches in between. That's depressing. That's realistic," he corrected, moving on to the next section of floor. "Depressing is thinking it's going to get better without you doing anything about it." He whistled his way down the hallway, leaving me with that fortune cookie wisdom and a floor that smelled like industrial-strength lemon cleaner. Around 2 a.m., I think. The wall clock might have been lying to me. A different nurse walked by, younger than the one who'd taken the baby. She was carrying a tablet and looked like she'd been running on caffeine and spite for at least 12 hours. She glanced at me, did a double take at my general state of disaster, and paused. You the river baby guy? She asked. Is that what we're calling it? I said, the river baby? Yeah, okay, that's me. River baby guy. I should get that on a t-shirt. Dr. Martinez is still with him. She's good. Best pediatrician in this place. She adjusted her scrubs, which had cartoon dinosaurs on them. One of the dinosaurs was wearing sunglasses. It felt important to notice these details because my brain was latching onto anything that wasn't crushing anxiety. You look like death, by the way. Thanks. I'm going for that pulled a baby out of a river and lost my mind aesthetic. Really niche, hard to pull off. She snorted. There's coffee in the family lounge. Third door on the left. It tastes like battery acid, but it's hot, and it's free. Sold, I said. The family lounge was exactly as depressing as you'd imagine. Floral wallpaper from 1987, a couch that had definitely witnessed some tragic news, and a coffee maker that looked like it had survived at least 2 wars. I poured myself a cup in a styrofoam container that immediately started melting under the heat. The coffee was black, thick, and tasted like someone had burned the concept of joy and then liquefied it. I drank it anyway. There were pamphlets everywhere. Coping with loss. Understanding grief. When a loved one is sick. I picked one up, stared at the generic stock photo of a sad woman looking out a window, and put it back down. None of them had titles like, What to Do When Your Wife Tries to Murder Your Child, or So Your Whole Reality Just Collapsed. A guide. I sat on the terrible couch and pulled out my phone. Against my better judgment, I opened my text messages. 17 from my mom. 9 from my dad. 3 from my sister who I hadn't talked to in 6 months, but apparently word travels fast in family crisis situations. And 1 from Clara. Just 1. We need to talk. I stared at those 4 words for a solid minute. We need to talk. Like we were breaking up. Like this was a relationship issue that could be solved over coffee and couples therapy. Like she hadn't just committed what was probably several felonies and definitely a lifetime ban from the Good Parent Club. I typed out at least 15 responses and deleted them all. Finally settled on no. Sent it. Blocked her number. Felt simultaneously empowered and terrified. Around 3 a.m. Definitely 3 a.m. this time. I checked the clock 4 times. The nurse from earlier came back. Not the young one with the dinosaur scrubs. The older one. The one who'd taken the baby and told me to let go. She found me in the family lounge, still holding my toxic coffee, staring at a motivational poster that said hang in there, with a picture of a cat dangling from a branch. Mr. Reed, she said, and I jumped so hard I almost spilled coffee on myself. That's me. Is the baby. He's stable, she said, and I felt my entire body sag with relief, so profound I thought I might pass out. Mild hypothermia, some dehydration, but responsive. His vitals are good. Dr. Martinez wants to keep him overnight for observation, but he's a fighter. Of course he is, I said, my voice cracking. He's mine. I know who he is, she said, and there was something in her expression that made me think she knew more than she was saying. You can see him in a few minutes. Room 207. Thank you, I managed. Thank you so much. She nodded and turned to leave, then paused. You should probably put on a shirt, though. Hospital policy, and also you look insane. I looked down. At some point I'd taken off my dress shirt entirely and was sitting there in just my undershirt, which was still damp and clinging to me like plastic wrap. Right? Yeah, I'll work on that. Coffee's on me next time, she said. Name's Callahan. Nurse Callahan. And for what it's worth. She fixed me with a look that was part sympathy, part steel. You did good tonight. I didn't feel like I'd done good. I felt like I'd barely survived. But I nodded anyway, because what else do you say to someone who just told you your son is alive? She walked away, and I sat there for another minute, finishing my terrible coffee, trying to remember how to breathe normally, trying to process that my son, my alive son, was in room 207, that I got to see him, that he was okay. I named him Liam right there in that terrible family lounge. Liam Reed. It meant strong-willed warrior, or protector, depending on which baby name website you believed, and both felt right. He'd survived something no baby should ever have to survive. He'd fought when fighting shouldn't have even been necessary. And I'd protect him. From Clara, from whoever else, from the whole damn world if I had to. I stood up, tossed the empty coffee cup in the trash, and headed toward room 207. My shirt was still damp, my hair was probably sticking up in 17 directions, and I was pretty sure I looked like an extra from a zombie movie. But I was about to see my son, and suddenly nothing else mattered. At 3 a.m. in a hospital hallway, smelling like river water and bad decisions, I realized I was done being the quiet husband who avoided conflict. I was done being the guy who went along to get along. I'd seen enough Lifetime movies during Clara's pregnancy to know this moment was either the start of a custody battle or a redemption arc. Maybe both. Probably both. But first, I needed to see Liam. 3 days. I got exactly 3 days of relative peace before Clara showed up at the hospital like a well-dressed harbinger of doom. 3 days of learning how to change a diaper properly without taping it to my own hand. 3 days of nurses teaching me how to hold a bottle at the right angle so Liam didn't gulp air and turn into a tiny, angry balloon. 3 days of sleeping in 2-hour increments on a fold-out chair that made the waiting room furniture look like luxury recliners. 3 days of slowly accepting that this was real, that Liam was alive, and that I was somehow responsible for keeping a human being alive when I regularly forgot to water my own houseplants. The hospital had moved us to a regular pediatric room on day 2. It had a window that looked out at the parking lot. Thrilling view, really inspired. And walls painted that specific shade of pale yellow that's supposed to be calming, but actually just makes everything look jaundiced. There was a mural of cartoon animals having a picnic that someone had painted with more enthusiasm than skill. The giraffe looked like it was having an existential crisis. Liam was in one of those clear plastic bassinets that make babies look like they're on display at a very specialized aquarium. He was hooked up to monitors that beeped at random intervals, just often enough to spike my blood pressure, but not often enough to actually mean anything was wrong. Every time a machine made a sound, I'd jolt awake. If I'd even managed to fall asleep, convinced something terrible was happening. Usually it was just the 4 machine being dramatic about air bubbles. Nurse Callahan had brought me coffee on day 2. Real coffee from the cafe down the street, not the industrial sludge from the family lounge. "You look like you fought a bear and lost," she'd said, setting the cup down on the plastic tray table. "Drink this before you pass out, and I have to admit you too." "I feel like I fought a bear," I'd replied. Except the bear was my life, and it had brass knuckles. "Poetic," she'd said, checking Liam's vitals with the efficient movements of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. "Your wife hasn't come by." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Blocked her number. Pretty sure she's not on the visitor list either." Smart man. She'd made a note on her tablet. Though fair warning, blocking someone's number doesn't actually create a force field. If she wants to show up, she can show up. "Thanks for that comforting thought," I'd said. "Really helps with the anxiety." She'd smirked. "I'm a nurse, not a therapist. I keep people alive. Keeping them sane is above my pay grade." On day 3, I was trying to figure out how to fold one of those receiving blankets into something that didn't look like a failed origami project when I heard heels clicking on the linoleum outside the room. Distinct heels. Expensive heels. The kind of heels that made a statement, and that statement was usually, "I'm about to make this everyone else's problem." I knew those heels. The door opened, and there she was, Clara, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine spread about elegant women dealing with minor inconveniences. She was wearing a black wrap dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Her hair was styled in those effortless waves that actually require an hour and 17 hair products, and her makeup was flawless. Not a trace of the mascara-streaked disaster from the funeral. She'd upgraded from grieving widow to corporate villain. "Mason," she said, like we were running into each other at a coffee shop. Casual. Pleasant. Utterly disconnected from reality. I stood up so fast I almost knocked over the chair. "How did you? Who let you?" I looked around for a nurse, a security guard, a convenient escape route, anything. "Visiting hours are open to family," she said, closing the door behind her. The click of the latch sounded like a judge's gavel. "I'm still his mother." "Legally questionable," I said, positioning myself between her and the bassinet. Every muscle in my body was tense, ready to what? Fight her? Run? Both seemed equally likely. Morally, definitely not. She sighed, like I was being difficult about something trivial, like choosing a restaurant or picking a paint color. "You've had your moment," she said, walking closer. I stepped back, keeping the distance constant. We did an awkward dance around the hospital room, me backing up, her advancing, like the world's worst waltz. "You made your point. You were upset. I understand. But this has gone on long enough. Give him back. My brain short-circuited. Just completely blue-screened. Give him. I couldn't even complete the sentence. The audacity was so staggering it had physically knocked the words out of my mouth. Back? What is he? An Amazon return. Did you keep the receipt? Are you going to claim he didn't match the description? Don't be childish, she said, and her tone was the same one she'd used when I'd eaten the last yogurt she'd been saving. Annoyed. Put upon. We need to discuss this like adults. Adults, I repeated. Right. Adults. You know what adults don't do, Clara? They don't throw babies in rivers. That's actually pretty high on the list of things adults don't do, right up there with arson and wearing Crocs to a wedding. Her jaw tightened. First crack in the perfect facade. I was going through something, she said. The grief, the pressure, everything. I wasn't thinking clearly. You know I would never actually hurt him. But you did, I said, and my voice came out quieter than I expected. Steadier. You did hurt him. You threw him in a river. He had hypothermia. He could have died. He almost did die. That's not thinking clearly. I don't even know what that is. But it's not something I can just forgive because you showed up wearing a nice dress and using your therapy voice. She took a step closer. I held my ground this time. Mason, please. Be reasonable. What are you going to do? Keep him here forever. You don't even have a job right now. You're living off savings from the business I built. I interrupted. The one you told me to quit because it wasn't stable enough. The one I left so I could get a real job at your father's company, where I spent 2 years being condescended to by people who think middle management is a personality trait. That was a tangent. I was getting off track. But 3 days of hospital coffee and no sleep had removed my filter entirely. This isn't about careers, she said, though her expression suggested it absolutely was about careers. This is about what's best for the baby. His name is Liam, I said, and you don't get to decide what's best for him anymore. That privilege was revoked when you committed attempted murder. I didn't. She stopped herself, took a breath, smoothed down her dress. The composure was cracking. I could see it. You're being dramatic. I knew you'd find him. I knew you'd save him. It was a test. I finished. Yeah, you said that. And you know what? You failed. Congratulations. You tested our marriage and found out it was built on a foundation of absolutely nothing. A knock on the door interrupted what was shaping up to be either a breakthrough or a complete meltdown. Dr. Martinez poked her head in. She was maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an air of someone who'd dealt with worse family drama and lived to tell the tale. Everything okay in here? She asked, though her tone suggested she knew everything was definitely not okay and was prepared to intervene with medical authority if necessary. Fine, Clara said immediately, smile snapping into place like a mask. Just visiting my son. Mr. Reed, Dr. Martinez looked at me. I opened my mouth, closed it, tried to figure out how to say my wife tried to kill our baby, and I'm pretty sure she's a sociopath in a way that wouldn't sound completely insane. Failed. She needs to leave, I said finally. She's not. She shouldn't be here. Clara's expression flickered. Anger, maybe, or embarrassment, or possibly just frustration that her plan to waltz in and reclaim custody wasn't working. Mason's under a lot of stress, she said to the doctor, voice dripping with concern. He's not sleeping. He's not eating. I'm worried about him. I'm worried about me too, I said. Mostly I'm worried that if I let her near Liam, I'll end up fishing him out of another body of water. Dr. Martinez's eyebrows rose slightly. I think, she said carefully, that Mr. Reed has the right to limit visitors during his son's recovery. Hospital policy supports the primary caregiver's decisions regarding who has access to the patient. I'm his mother, Clara said, and there was an edge to her voice now. The polish was wearing off. And I'm calling security, Dr. Martinez replied, pulling out her phone with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Unless you'd like to leave voluntarily? For a moment, I thought Clara might actually fight it. Her hands clenched at her sides, her jaw set, and I saw something in her eyes that looked almost feral. Then the mask slammed back into place. She smoothed her hair, adjusted her purse strap, and smiled that smile that used to make me think she was elegant, but now just made me think of sharks. This isn't over, she said, looking at me. Yeah, I said. It really is. She turned and walked out, heels clicking their angry percussion down the hallway. Dr. Martinez waited until the sound faded before closing the door and turning to me. You want to tell me what that was about? She asked. Would you believe me if I said my wife tried to drown our son, and I'm just now realizing I married a supervillain? She studied me for a long moment. Actually, she said, yeah, I would. I've seen weirder. You should probably talk to a social worker. And maybe a lawyer. Added to the list. I said, slumping back into the chair. My hands were shaking. I hadn't noticed they were shaking until now. Right after learn how to function on zero sleep and figure out how to be a single dad. Coffee helps with the first one, she said. The rest you figure out as you go. That's parenting. After she left, I stood next to Liam's bassinet, watching his tiny chest rise and fall with each breath. He was sleeping, completely oblivious to the drama swirling around him, and I envied him that peace. Your mom's crazy, I whispered. Just so you know, it's not your fault. It's definitely not my fault. It's just one of those things you find out too late, I guess. Liam made a small sound in his sleep, and his hand opened and closed like he was grasping at dreams. But I've got you, I said, and she's not getting anywhere near you. That's a promise. Through the window, I could see Clara in the parking lot, standing next to a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. She was on her phone, gesturing with her free hand in that aggressive way that meant she was either very angry or very determined or both. Nurse Callahan appeared in the doorway with another coffee. Saw the show, she said. You okay? Define okay. Still breathing. Not currently screaming. Then yeah, I said. I'm okay. She handed me the coffee. She's going to be a problem, she said. I know. You're going to need help. I know that too. She nodded, checked Liam one more time, and left me alone with my son and my coffee and the growing certainty that this was just the beginning of a very long fight. The phone call came at 7:43 a.m. the next morning, which I know with absolute certainty because I'd been staring at the clock since 6:15, waiting for visiting hours to start so I could get back to the hospital. I'd gone home for the first time in 4 days. Nurse Callahan had basically forced me out, threatening to have me removed by security if I didn't shower and sleep in an actual bed. You smell like a gym locker that died, she'd said. Go home. We'll call if anything happens. So I'd gone home to our apartment, my apartment now, I guess, and immediately regretted it. The place was exactly how we'd left it on the morning of the funeral. Clara's coffee cup was still in the sink. The blanket she always used was still draped over the couch. There was a half-finished crossword puzzle on the kitchen table with her handwriting filling in the easy clues and leaving the hard ones blank like always. I'd stood in the doorway of the nursery for about 20 minutes, just staring at the crib we'd assembled together, the mobile with the little elephants that played a tinny lullaby, the changing table stocked with diapers we'd never used because Noah, Liam, whatever his name was supposed to be, had gone straight from the hospital to being dead. Except not dead. Except very much alive and currently sleeping in a different hospital while I had a breakdown in a nursery that felt like a museum exhibit of a life that never got to happen. I'd made it to the shower, stood under water that was too hot, and tried to scrub off the last 4 days. Didn't work. Some things don't wash off. Then I'd collapsed into bed, our bed, my bed, and managed maybe 3 hours of sleep that consisted mainly of nightmares about rivers and wooden boxes and Clara's eerily calm face, saying, "We can fix this," over and over like a broken record player in hell. So when my phone rang at 7:43 a.m., I was already awake, already dressed, already halfway out the door with a travel mug of coffee that tasted like desperation and freeze-dried optimism. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Probably the same instinct that makes you check a weird noise in a horror movie, even though you know it's going to be the killer. Mason Reed. The voice was male, smooth as butter on a hot skillet, with that specific cadence that screamed expensive law degree and even more expensive suit. Who's asking? I said, fumbling with my keys. My name is Richard Vance. I'm an attorney representing Clara Reed. I'm calling to discuss arrangements regarding your son. I dropped my keys. They hit the apartment floor with a jangle that sounded like tiny alarm bells. You've got to be kidding me. I assure you, Mr. Reed, this is a very serious matter. Mrs. Reed is deeply concerned about the welfare of the child and believes that. Stop, I said, picking up my keys with shaking hands. Just stop talking. Clara threw our baby in a river. Did she mention that part? Did that come up in your consultation? Or did she skip over the attempted murder portion of her maternal resume? There was a pause. A calculated pause. The kind of pause lawyers practice in front of mirrors. Mrs. Reed has explained the circumstances surrounding the incident at the cemetery. She was experiencing severe postpartum depression and psychosis. She wasn't in her right mind. Surely you can understand that mental health. Mental health, I interrupted, doesn't give you a free pass to drown your kid. That's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. Mr. Reed, I understand you're upset. Upset? I was laughing now. Hysterical laughter. The kind that sounds like crying's weird cousin. Upset is what I am when someone cuts me off in traffic. I don't even have a word for what this is. Horrified? Traumatized? Actively planning to never let that woman within 50 feet of my son for the rest of natural history. Mrs. Reed just wants what's best for the child, Vance said, and his tone had shifted slightly. Less smooth, more rehearsed, like he was reading from a script. She's willing to discuss custody arrangements, co-parenting schedules, anything that would allow her to be part of her son's life. Define best, I said, echoing my words from the river. Because she threw best into the Clearwater River wrapped in a sheet. I'm pretty sure her judgment on what constitutes best is permanently disqualified. Mr. Reed, if we can't reach an amicable agreement, Mrs. Reed is prepared to pursue this matter through the courts. I'm calling as a courtesy to see if we can avoid what would be a very public, very messy legal battle. Oh, there it was. The threat wrapped in politeness. The velvet glove with brass knuckles underneath. You know what? I said, unlocking my car door. Let's do it. Let's have the messy legal battle. Let's get it all out in the open. I've got a dashcam video of her throwing a baby in a river. What's she got? Designer heels and a good cry face. Another pause. This one felt different. Less calculated, more concerned. You have video evidence? Crystal clear 1080p, I said, starting the car. Even caught the audio. Want me to send you the clip? You can use it in your promotional materials. Vance Law, defending the indefensible since whenever you pass the bar. That won't be necessary, he said quickly. Too quickly. I'll discuss this with my client and be in touch. He hung up. I sat in my car for a solid minute, gripping the steering wheel, feeling my heart trying to escape through my ribcage. Then I called the only person I knew who might actually be able to help. Leo Diaz, my best friend since college, currently working as a private investigator after a spectacularly failed attempt at law school and an even more spectacular success at being nosy for money. Leo was the kind of guy who'd helped me move 3 times, testified as a character witness when I'd been accused of keying my old boss's car. I hadn't, but someone had, and my boss was convinced it was me, and once talked me out of getting a tattoo of a dragon playing guitar after 6 beers at a dive bar. He answered on the first ring. Please tell me you're calling because you need help hiding a body. Not yet, I said. But the day is young. Clara hired a lawyer. Of course she did. Evil never rests. It just files paperwork. What did he say? I gave him the recap while driving to the hospital, running through yellows that were definitely closer to red, taking turns like I was training for NASCAR. Leo listened without interrupting. One of his few genuinely good qualities, and when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. You mentioned video evidence, he said finally. Dashcam. I sent you the clip the day after it happened, remember? You said I married a Bond villain. Right. Okay, good. That's leverage. But Mason, listen to me. You need your own lawyer. Like, yesterday. You need someone who specializes in family law, custody battles, all that fun stuff. Someone who can take that video and turn it into kryptonite. I don't have lawyer money, I said. I've got panic purchase diapers at 3 a.m. money. There's a difference. My cousin's wife's brother, Leo said. Franklin Morrison. He does family law, custody cases, divorce stuff. Owes me a favor from when I found proof his client's ex was hiding assets in the Caymans. I'll call him. You're a saint, I said. I'm really not. But I am petty, and I want to watch Clara lose spectacularly, so my motivations are pure chaos. Give me an hour. He hung up. I made it to the hospital in record time, parked illegally again because I'd decided parking laws were suggestions and I was choosing to ignore them, and headed up to Liam's room. Nurse Callahan was there, checking monitors. She looked up when I walked in. You showered, she observed. Proud of you. Small victories. Clara hired a lawyer, I said, dropping into the chair that I'd begun to think of as mine. Called me this morning with threats disguised as courtesy. Lawyers, she said, making a note on her tablet. Nature's way of making sure everyone stays miserable. You got your own lawyer? Working on it. My friend's calling someone. Good. You're gonna need one. Women like her don't give up easy. She finished with the monitors and turned to face me fully. Off the record, I've been a nurse for 23 years. I've seen a lot of terrible parents. Some are terrible because they're overwhelmed. Some because they're addicted to something. Some because they never wanted kids in the first place. But your wife. She shook her head. She's something else. She's calculated terrible. That's worse. Thanks for the pep talk, I said, really brightening my day. I'm not here to brighten your day. I'm here to keep that baby alive and you functional. Speaking of which, she pulled a granola bar from her pocket and tossed it to me. Eat. You look like a strong breeze could knock you over. My phone buzzed. Text from Leo. Frank can see you at 1. His office. I'll text address. Bring the video. Bring everything. I showed Callahan the text. She nodded approvingly. Go. I'll watch him. And Mason? Don't let her lawyer intimidate you. Fancy words don't change facts. And the facts are on your side. At 12:30, I was sitting in a subway 3 blocks from the hospital, eating a sandwich I couldn't taste, watching the clock. The place smelled like bread and bleach, and there was a teenager behind the counter who looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Same kid. Same. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up. Clara had pivoted from lawyers to social media, apparently deciding that if legal threats didn't work, public opinion might. She'd posted on Instagram a photo of her and Noah from 2 months ago, both looking happy and perfect, with a caption about missing my angel and fighting for the truth. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. Stay strong, mama. Praying for you. God has a plan. A few people I recognized from her book club and yoga class chiming in with heart emojis and support. Not a single mention of the river. The box. The attempted infanticide. I considered commenting. Try therapy, not homicide. I typed out. Deleted it. Nice Photoshop. Did it remove the part where you're a monster? Deleted that too. Instead, I took a screenshot, sent it to Leo with the message. She's building a narrative. His response, so are we. Except ours has evidence. See you at 1. I finished my sandwich, threw out the wrapper, and headed to Frank Morrison's office, ready to fight the messiest legal battle of my life. Bring it on, Clara. I've got nothing left to lose except everything that matters. Frank Morrison's office had been encouraging. He'd watched the dashcam footage exactly once, said holy shit 3 times, and immediately filed for an emergency custody hearing. This is the most open and shut case I've seen in 15 years, he'd said, adjusting his glasses that kept sliding down his nose. Either that, or I'm having a stroke. But I'm pretty sure it's the former. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a family courtroom that looked like it had been decorated by someone who thought oppressively beige was a design aesthetic. The walls were that color that's technically tan, but really just screams, abandon all hope ye who enter here. The fluorescent lights hummed with the enthusiasm of someone who'd given up on life around 1987. The benches were wood, uncomfortable, and somehow judgmental. Family courtrooms are weird spaces. They're smaller than you'd expect from watching TV legal dramas. More intimate. Like someone decided that life-altering decisions about children should happen in a room roughly the size of a Denny's. There were maybe 15 people scattered around. Other families waiting for their turn at the dysfunction carousel. A court reporter who looked like she'd heard every terrible thing humans could do to each other and was thoroughly unimpressed. And a bailiff who stood by the door with the posture of someone who'd broken up at least 3 fistfights before lunch. Clara sat 3 rows ahead of me with Richard Vance, who looked exactly how he'd sounded on the phone. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive cologne that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Clara had gone for the grieving mother look, simple black dress, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a tasteful bun. She'd even toned down her makeup. Strategic tears, I thought. She's prepared strategic tears. My own lawyer, Frank Morrison, sat next to me shuffling papers and occasionally muttering to himself. Frank was maybe 50, with graying hair that looked like it had given up trying to be professional, and a tie that was slightly crooked. He looked like a high school math teacher who'd accidentally wandered into law school and decided to stick with it. But Leo had vouched for him, and the man had looked at my dashcam footage with the kind of righteous anger that suggested he actually gave a damn. Judge Decker, Frank had told me during our prep session. She's fair but tough. Doesn't tolerate bullshit. Hates liars even more than she hates lawyers who show up late. We're in good hands. And if we're not, I'd asked. Then we appeal, and I work for free until we win. But we won't need to. Trust me. Trust. Right. I trusted Clara when she said she was ready to be a mother. I trusted her when she said she was fine after Noah was born, that the mood swings were normal, that she just needed time. My track record with trust was currently batting 0. The bailiff called our case. Reed versus Reed, emergency custody hearing. We stood, walked to our respective tables like boxers entering a ring, except instead of gloves and mouthguards, we had lawyers and crippling anxiety. Clara didn't look at me. I couldn't stop looking at her, trying to find some trace of the woman I'd married 7 years ago. The one who'd laughed at my terrible jokes. The one who'd cried during the proposal because she was just so happy. The one who'd held my hand during the ultrasound and whispered, "That's our baby," like it was the most amazing thing in the world. That woman was gone. Or maybe she'd never existed. Maybe I'd just married a really good actress who'd finally dropped the script. Judge Marion Decker entered, and everyone stood. She was maybe 60, with steel gray hair cut in a no-nonsense bob and glasses that sat on a chain around her neck like a weapon she could deploy at any moment. Her face had the expression of someone who'd seen every flavor of human dysfunction and was thoroughly done with all of it. "Be seated," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made you sit down even if you were already sitting. She settled into her chair, opened a folder, and spent about 30 seconds reading something. Those 30 seconds felt like 30 years. "This is an emergency custody hearing regarding Liam Reed, age 3 months, she said finally. "Mr. Reed is seeking full custody with supervised visitation for Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Reed is contesting. Mr. Vance, you're representing Mrs. Reed." Vance stood, smoothing his already smooth tie. "Yes, Your Honor. My client is deeply distressed by these proceedings. She loves her son and wants nothing more than to be reunited with him. She's been suffering from severe postpartum depression and—" "Save the opening statement," Judge Decker interrupted. "I've read the filings. Mr. Morrison, your client is alleging that Mrs. Reed attempted to harm the child?" Frank stood. He didn't smooth his tie. He didn't have to. "Not alleging, Your Honor. We have video evidence. Mrs. Reed placed the infant in a wooden box and threw it into the Clearwater River following the child's funeral. Mr. Reed recovered the child and immediately took him to the emergency room, where he was treated for hypothermia." A murmur went through the courtroom. The other families waiting for their cases suddenly looked very interested in ours. The court reporter's fingers froze on her machine for just a second. Judge Decker's eyebrow, just one, the right one, rose approximately 1 millimeter. For her, that was basically standing up and screaming. "Video evidence." "Yes, Your Honor. Dashcam footage from Mr. Reed's vehicle. We have it on a flash drive, ready to present." "Let's see it." Frank walked to the judge's bench, handed her the flash drive. A bailiff set up a small monitor. This courtroom was apparently fancy enough for audiovisual equipment, though the TV looked like it had survived the Clinton administration. The room went quiet. That specific kind of quiet where everyone's breathing sounds loud. The video started. There was my car, parked at the cemetery. You could see the rain, the blurry shapes of mourners in the background. Then Clara, walking into frame, holding the box, standing at the river's edge. The audio picked up the rain, the distant thunder, and, if you listen closely, my voice yelling Clara. Then she threw it. The splash was clearly audible. Then me, running into frame, falling in the mud, getting back up, wading into the water, pulling out the box, opening it. The camera angle wasn't perfect. Dashcams aren't exactly cinema quality, but it was good enough. You could see me pull something from the box. You could see my face, the absolute horror. You could hear me say, clear as day, oh God, he's breathing." And then Clara's voice, calm and distant. "You don't understand." The video ended. The courtroom was silent enough to hear a pin drop in the next county. Judge Decker removed her glasses, cleaned them on her robe with slow, deliberate movements, put them back on, looked at Clara with an expression that could have frozen lava. "Mrs. Reed," she said, her voice carefully neutral in that way that meant she was absolutely furious and controlling it through sheer professional willpower. "Would you like to explain what I just watched?" Clara stood. She'd gone pale under her strategically minimal makeup. Vance tried to pull her back down. Probably wanted to object, to coach her, to do literally anything to stop what was about to happen, but she shook him off. Your Honor, I wasn't in my right mind. The grief, the hormones, everything was. I thought he was dead. We just buried him. I was trying to, she stopped. Started again. It was symbolic. I was saying goodbye. I knew Mason would. You knew, Judge Decker interrupted, and her voice could have cut steel, that your husband would fish your living child out of a river? Clara faltered. The script she'd prepared was falling apart. It wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean. Ma'am, Judge Decker said, and that ma'am landed like a gavel strike. The only symbol I see here is attempted infanticide. Boom. Nuclear bomb dropped. Vance shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's an inflammatory characterization of what was clearly a mental health crisis. Mr. Vance, your client threw a baby in a river. I'm being generous by calling it symbolic. She turned back to Clara. Mrs. Reed, have you been evaluated by a mental health professional since this incident? Clara looked at Vance. Vance looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else, possibly on fire, because that would be more comfortable than this. She's scheduled for an evaluation next week, Your Honor. Next week. Judge Decker made a note. 2 weeks after she threw a baby in a river. Excellent prioritization. The sarcasm was so thick you could have used it to patch drywall. She looked at Frank. Mr. Morrison, what's the status of the child now? Frank stood again. Liam is healthy and in Mr. Reed's care. He was released from the hospital 5 days ago. Mr. Reed has been managing his care full-time with support from his family. The child is thriving. And Mrs. Reed's contact with the child since the incident? She appeared at the hospital once. Hospital staff asked her to leave after Mr. Reed expressed concern for the child's safety. She's had no contact since. Judge Decker nodded slowly. She looked at Clara again, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mrs. Reed, I'm going to be very clear with you. What you did, regardless of your mental state, regardless of your intentions, regardless of any explanation you or your attorney want to provide, was dangerous, reckless, and could have resulted in the death of an infant. Do you understand that? Clara nodded, tears finally making an appearance. Strategic or real, I couldn't tell anymore. I need verbal confirmation, Judge Decker said. Yes, Your Honor. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Judge Decker looked down at her notes. Made several marks with a pen that sounded way too loud in the quiet room. Emergency full custody is granted to Mason Reed. Mrs. Reed is granted supervised visitation only, pending a full psychological evaluation and completion of a court-mandated parenting course. Visits will be supervised by a court-appointed monitor at a neutral location. Mrs. Reed is not to have unsupervised contact with the minor child until I see significant evidence of rehabilitation and zero risk to the child's safety. The gavel came down. That final, official sound that meant it was over. I'd won. Liam was mine. Vance was already whispering urgently to Clara, probably planning an appeal, plotting the next move. But Clara wasn't listening. She was staring at me across the courtroom, and her expression was something I couldn't read. Anger? Sadness? Calculation? All three. Frank clapped me on the shoulder. Told you, he said. Open and shut. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. I just nodded. As we filed out of the courtroom, I passed Clara in the aisle. She grabbed my arm, not hard, but firm enough to stop me. Vance tried to intervene, but she waved him off. This isn't over, she said quietly. You think you've won, but you haven't. I looked at her hand on my arm. Looked at her face. Yeah, I said, pulling free. It really is. Outside the courthouse, the sun was shining like the universe hadn't just witnessed a complete demolition of my marriage and Clara's parental rights. People were walking by, living their normal lives, complaining about traffic and checking their phones and buying coffee. I sat on a bench, pulled out my phone, and called Nurse Callahan. How'd it go? She answered. We won, I said. Full custody. She gets supervised visits only. Good, Callahan said. Now go get your son and take him home. He's been asking for you. He's 3 months old. He can't ask for anything. He's been fussy. Same thing. Get over here. I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. On my way. Turns out, winning custody is the easy part. Actually raising a human being? That's where things get complicated. The hospital discharged Liam 2 days after the hearing. Dr. Martinez gave me a folder thick enough to stop a bullet, filled with care instructions, follow-up appointment cards, vaccination schedules, and about 17 pamphlets on infant care that I was absolutely going to read and definitely not use as coasters. "Call if you need anything," she'd said, which felt less like an offer and more like a prediction that I would, in fact, need everything. Nurse Callahan walked us out, carrying the diaper bag I'd hastily packed with items I'd panic-purchased from the hospital gift shop. "You got this," she said, which was either encouragement or a flat-out lie. "And if you don't got this, you've got my number. Don't abuse it, but don't be an idiot either. There's a middle ground." "What if I can't find the middle ground?" I asked, strapping Liam's car seat into the Civic with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for defusing bombs. "Then call me at 2 a.m. like every other new parent," she said. "We're all making it up as we go. You're just doing it with more legal drama than most." The drive home was terrifying. Every car felt too close. Every turn felt too sharp. Every time Liam made a sound. And babies make a lot of sounds, it turns out. I checked the rearview mirror to make sure he was still breathing. The 10-minute drive took 20 because I was going 15 miles under the speed limit and treating every yellow light like a personal threat. When I finally pulled into the apartment complex parking lot, I sat in the car for a solid 5 minutes, staring at the building, trying to psych myself up for what came next. Solo parenting. No backup. No relief shift. Just me and a 3-month-old who had no idea his life had turned into a legal thriller. "All right, buddy," I said to Liam, who was asleep in his car's seat, completely oblivious to my internal crisis. "Let's do this. Let's go be a family." A weird, traumatized, legally complicated family, but a family. He didn't respond because, again, baby, getting the car seat out of the car, up the stairs, through the door, and into the apartment was like competing in the world's worst obstacle course. I banged the car seat against the doorframe twice, almost dropped my keys down the stairwell, and may have said several words that Liam absolutely should not learn for at least another 15 years. The apartment looked exactly how I'd left it, which is to say, like someone had been living in a state of crisis management. Dishes in the sink, laundry on the couch, that weird smell I still hadn't tracked down. The nursery was the only room that was actually ready, still pristine and unused, waiting for a baby that had technically never made it home the first time. I set the car seat down in the living room and just stood there, looking around, suddenly aware of how completely unprepared I was. The hospital had provided a safety net, nurses who knew what they were doing, equipment that beeped when something was wrong, professionals within shouting distance. Now it was just me and whatever parenting instincts I might or might not have. Liam woke up approximately 30 seconds after I set him down and immediately started crying. Not fussing. Full-blown, red-faced, something is terribly wrong and you need to fix it immediately crying. Okay, I muttered, unbuckling him from the car seat with shaking hands. Diaper? Hungry? Mad at me? All of the above. I checked his diaper. Dry? Progress, I guess. Then I realized I had no idea when he'd last eaten because the hospital had been keeping track and I'd been too stressed about the court hearing to write anything down. Great start, Mason. Father of the Year material right here. I made a bottle, 4 ounces, room temperature, just like the nurse had shown me approximately 8,000 times. Liam latched on and stopped crying immediately, which felt like a major victory until I realized this was literally the bare minimum of parenting. Keep baby fed. Revolutionary stuff. While he ate, I looked around the apartment with fresh eyes. Baby-proofing was going to be necessary eventually, but right now the bigger issue was the general state of chaos. Clara had always been the organized one. She had systems, color-coded calendars, labeled bins, a place for everything and everything in its place. I had a junk drawer that had achieved sentience and was probably planning a coup. My phone buzzed. Text from my mom. "How's my grandson? Send pictures. Your father wants to come visit. I'm making lasagna." Of course she was making lasagna. That was Mom's solution to every crisis. Someone died. Lasagna. Someone got divorced. Lasagna. Someone's wife tried to murder their baby, and now they're a single dad. Lasagna. Extra cheese. I sent back a selfie of me and Liam, both of us looking equally exhausted. Within seconds, my phone rang. "Mason, Mom's voice was that specific combination of joy and worry that only mothers can achieve. He's beautiful. He looks just like you did as a baby. How are you managing? Are you eating? Sleeping? Do you need me to come over? I'm fine, Mom, I lied. We're figuring it out. Your father and I can be there in 40 minutes. I'll bring the lasagna. And some groceries. When's the last time you went shopping? Actually, don't answer that. I already know it's been too long. Mom, really 40 minutes, she repeated. Lock your door until we get there. I don't trust that Clara won't show up. She hung up before I could protest, which was fine because she was probably right about the door locking thing, and about the groceries, and definitely about the lasagna. Liam finished his bottle and immediately spit up about half of it onto my shirt. My last clean shirt, naturally. Cool, I said, grabbing a burp cloth, which I'd learned was just a fancy name for a small towel that you drape over yourself to catch baby vomit. This is fine. This is totally normal. People do this every day. Millions of people. They survive. Some of them even seem happy about it. Liam burped, looked at me with those huge eyes that were starting to focus better, and made a sound that might have been contentment or might have been gas. Hard to tell with babies. I changed into an old college t-shirt that had holes in it, but was cleanish, then attempted to tidy up before my parents arrived. Managed to do the dishes, move the laundry from the couch to the bedroom floor, baby steps, literally, and light a candle to mask whatever that smell was. The candle was called Autumn Harvest and smelled like someone had distilled the concept of trying too hard into wax form, but it was better than mystery stench. True to her word, Mom arrived in exactly 40 minutes with Dad in tow, both of them carrying enough food to survive an apocalypse. Mom immediately zeroed in on Liam, making those grandmother sounds that transcend language, half coo, half sigh, entirely devoted. Oh, Mason, she said, tears in her eyes. He's perfect. Dad clapped me on the shoulder with enough force to nearly knock me over. You did good, son. Real good. I fished him out of a river and won a court case, I said. The bar was pretty low. Bar's never low when it comes to your kids, Dad said. You showed up. That's what matters. They stayed for 3 hours. Mom reorganized my kitchen, cooked enough lasagna to feed a small army, and gave me a crash course in baby care that I definitely needed. Dad assembled the swing I'd bought but hadn't managed to put together, fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, and offered exactly 2 pieces of advice. Sleep when he sleeps, and don't be afraid to ask for help. When they finally left, the apartment felt different. Less like a disaster zone, more like a place where a person could actually raise a child. The nursery was set up. The kitchen was stocked. There was lasagna in the fridge for approximately the next 3 weeks. That night, around 2 a.m., Liam woke up screaming. I stumbled out of bed. I'd set up a bassinet in my room because the idea of him sleeping in another room felt impossible, and went through the checklist. Diaper, needed changing. Bottle, needed food. Comfort, needed holding. I changed him on the changing table in the nursery, the nightlight casting everything in soft blue. His little legs kicked while I wrestled with the diaper tabs, and I realized I was talking to him. So here's the deal, kid, I said, fastening the diaper with only moderate fumbling. Your mom's got issues. Big ones. Court-ordered therapy kind of issues. But you're gonna be okay, because I'm not going anywhere. And your grandparents are clearly insane about you. And Nurse Callahan gave me her number, which feels like having a superhero on speed dial. Liam watched me with those serious baby eyes, like he was actually listening. Probably not. Probably just tracking the sound of my voice. But it felt like connection. I picked him up, made a bottle, and settled into the rocking chair Clara had insisted we buy. She'd said it was an investment. At the time, I'd thought she meant for nursing, for bonding, for all those picture-perfect parent moments. Now I realized it was an investment in survival. A place to sit at 2 a.m. when you're so tired you can barely remember your own name, but your kid needs you anyway. Liam drank his bottle, eyes getting heavy, little hand curled around my finger. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Somewhere a dog barked. Normal life, continuing on, completely unaware that my world had exploded and rebuilt itself in the span of a week. We're gonna make it, I whispered. I don't know how, but we're gonna make it. He fell asleep before he finished the bottle. I burped him gently, carried him back to the bassinet, and laid him down with the kind of careful precision usually reserved for handling explosives. He stayed asleep. Small miracle. I collapsed back into bed, set my alarm for 2 hours from now, because that's apparently how time works with infants, and stared at the ceiling. The neighbor upstairs was walking around. I could hear footsteps, and I wondered if they had any idea what was happening in the apartment below. Probably not. Probably they were just getting water or going to the bathroom or living their normal, uncomplicated lives. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. You can't keep him from me forever. He's my son too. Clara. She'd gotten a new number. Of course she had. I blocked it without responding, turned my phone face down, and closed my eyes. 2 hours until the next feeding. 2 hours to sleep. 2 hours of peace before the chaos started again. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I actually felt something like hope. Not happiness. Happiness felt too far away, too complicated. But hope? Hope was manageable. Hope was enough to keep going. In the bassinet next to my bed, Liam made small sleep sounds, completely oblivious to the drama swirling around him. And honestly, that was probably for the best. Tomorrow I'd deal with Clara's new number. Tomorrow I'd figure out daycare and work and all the logistics of single parenting. Tomorrow I'd tackle whatever fresh hell came my way. But tonight we'd survived. And sometimes survival is the best victory you can ask for. 6 weeks turned into a rhythm I never thought I'd find. Liam's 3 a.m. screaming became less apocalyptic crisis and more annoying but manageable. I learned to fold laundry one-handed while holding a baby. I discovered that cold pizza is a perfectly acceptable breakfast when you've been up since 4 a.m. I mastered the art of falling asleep sitting up, which is apparently a superpower all parents develop around week 3. The apartment transformed from disaster zone to functional chaos. I'd given up on keeping things perfect. Clara's color-coded organization system was dead and buried. But I'd achieved a new standard I called mostly safe and probably clean enough. The health inspector wasn't coming over, and Liam couldn't judge me yet, so it worked. Mom became a regular visitor, showing up every Tuesday with groceries and unsolicited advice. Dad fixed things I didn't know were broken. My sister Rachel finally called, 6 weeks late, but whatever, and sent a care package full of baby clothes with dinosaurs on them because apparently everyone in my family had agreed dinosaurs were my personality now. Liam's smile made every sleepless night worth it. When he learned to grab my beard hair and pull it like he was starting a lawnmower, I didn't even care that it hurt. This was progress. This was life. This was fatherhood in its purest, most exhausting form. Clara sent letters. Lots of letters. They arrived every few days, each one more desperate than the last. Apologies written in her perfect handwriting. Explanations about therapy and medication and how she was getting better. Promises that she'd changed, that she understood now, that she just wanted a chance to be his mother. I kept them in a drawer, unopened. Frank said to document everything but not respond. She's building a paper trail, he'd warned. Don't give her ammunition. Then one Tuesday, she showed up. Not at the apartment. She was smarter than that, or at least her lawyer was. She showed up at the playground near the grocery store where I'd taken Liam for some fresh air and a desperate attempt to feel like a normal human being. I saw her standing by the swings, watching us. Not approaching. Not threatening, just standing there with her hands in her coat pockets, looking smaller than I remembered. Broken, almost. For a moment, just a moment, I felt something like pity. Then I remembered the river, the box, the way she'd said, "We can fix this," like our son was a typo. I packed up Liam, walked past her without a word, and drove home. She didn't follow, didn't call out, just stood there watching us leave, and honestly, that was almost worse than if she'd made a scene. That night, one of her letters was under my door. This time I opened it. Thank you for saving him. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm trying. I'm really trying. See, I folded it carefully, put it with the others, and went to check on Liam. He was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the complicated mess his existence had created. Your mom's getting help, I whispered. That's something. It wasn't forgiveness. But maybe, eventually, it could be closure. 3 months after the courthouse gavel came down, Judge Decker called us back for the follow-up hearing. Clara had completed her court-ordered therapy. The psychiatric evaluation came back with words like stable and no longer a danger and suitable for supervised visitation. Frank warned me this was coming. The system loves redemption arcs, he'd said, even when they're not earned. But something had shifted. Not forgiveness, I wasn't that evolved yet, but maybe acceptance. Clara was Liam's mother, whether I liked it or not. And Liam deserved the chance to know her, assuming she could keep her act together long enough to not traumatize him further. The supervised visits started at a family center downtown that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. A social worker named Patricia sat in the corner with a clipboard, taking notes while Clara held Liam awkwardly, like she was handling evidence instead of her own kid. He cried for the first 10 minutes straight until she figured out he needed a bottle, not a pep talk. I watched through a window that felt more like a one-way mirror in a cop show. Leo sat next to me, eating vending machine. Pretzels. She looks terrified, he observed. Good, I said. She should be. By visit 3, Clara had figured out the basics. Bottle at the right angle. Burp cloth on the shoulder. The way Liam liked being bounced more than rocked. She even made him laugh once. A real baby laugh that sounded like hiccups and pure joy combined. I hated that it made me feel something other than rage. Meanwhile, life kept happening. My parents had fully embraced grandparent mode, showing up uninvited with toys Liam was too young for and advice I didn't ask for, but secretly appreciated. I'd started a blog on a whim, Dad with a dash cam, documenting the chaos of single parenthood and unexpected custody battles. It started as therapy, turned into dark comedy, and somehow went viral. Suddenly, I had sponsors reaching out, parents messaging me their own horror stories, and a platform I never intended to build. One article, How to Spot Red Flags When They're Wearing Designer Heels, got shared 50,000 times. Clara's friends from book club definitely saw it. I definitely didn't care. Judge Decker granted permanent custody to me at the final hearing. Clara got unsupervised visitation, 2 afternoons a week, building toward weekends. Frank had warned me this might happen. She did the work, he'd said. Whether it's real or performance art, we can't prove otherwise. The day the custody order was finalized, Clara sent a text from her current number. I'd stopped blocking them, just muted the notifications. Thank you for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it. I stared at it for a long time before responding. Not because I'd forgiven her. Not because I trusted her. But because Liam was watching me with those curious baby eyes, and someday he'd ask about his mother. And I wanted to be able to say I tried. You're welcome. Don't make me regret it. Short. Honest. Final. She sent back a heart emoji, which felt wildly inappropriate given the circumstances, but whatever. Baby steps. Literally and figuratively. That night, I wrote a blog post titled, Forgiveness is Complicated, and Other Things Nobody Tells You About Co-Parenting with Someone Who Tried to Drown Your Kid. It got 20,000 shares in 12 hours. Therapy through internet attention. Not healthy, probably, but it worked for me. Liam's first birthday fell on a Saturday. Sunny, warm, the exact opposite of that nightmare funeral day. Mom had wanted to throw a massive party with balloons and a cake shaped like something complicated, but I'd shut that down. Small, I'd said. Just us. Instead, I took him back to the river. Not for revenge or drama or some grand symbolic gesture. Just closure. For me, maybe. For him, eventually, when he was old enough to understand. We stood where the box had sunk. The water was calm today, reflecting blue sky instead of storm clouds. I'd brought a toy boat, bright yellow, plastic, completely unsinkable. I placed it on the water and watched it float downstream, bobbing peacefully. See that, buddy? I said, holding Liam on my hip. He was wearing a dinosaur shirt, because of course he was, and was more interested in grabbing my sunglasses than paying attention to my attempts at meaningful moments. That's where Daddy realized he needed better taste in women. He gurgled, reached for the water, completely unimpressed by my emotional journey. Behind us, footsteps on the path. I turned, already knowing who it was. Clara stood there in jeans and a simple shirt. No designer heels, no perfect hair, just her. She looked different. Smaller. Real. She was holding flowers, white lilies, hands shaking slightly. I didn't know you'd be here, she said quietly. I come here sometimes. To remember. Too. She stopped, looked at Liam. He's gotten so big. Yeah, I said. That's what babies do. When they're not being thrown in rivers, they grow. Low blow. I knew it. Didn't care. She flinched, but didn't argue. Instead, she walked to the water's edge and laid the flowers down. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not to me. To the river. To whatever ghost of our old life still haunted this place. I'm so sorry. We stood there in silence, the three of us, watching the toy boat drift away until it disappeared around the bend. He's beautiful, Clara said finally. You're doing a good job. I know, I said. Not cocky, just honest. He deserves better than what we gave him, so I'm giving him better. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Can I hold him? Just for a moment? I looked at Liam, looked at Clara, looked at the river that had almost taken everything. 1 minute, I said, handing him over carefully, staying close enough to grab him if needed. Clara held him like he was made of glass, crying softly, whispering things I couldn't hear. Liam, naturally, pulled her hair. She laughed through tears. When the minute was up, she handed him back without argument. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me. Just keep getting better. She nodded and walked away, leaving the flowers floating on the water. Liam looked up at me and smiled. All gums and drool and pure joy. The kind of smile that makes you forget every sleepless night and every moment of panic. Come on, kid, I said, heading back to the car. Let's go home. The river flowed on, calm and indifferent, carrying away the past. And for once, I laughed, because sometimes the best revenge is living long enough to joke about it.